Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you live to episode number 29 of the Primetime Rundown right here on the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Networks. Alongside my man, Nick Partain, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We cannot forget the two on the bottom, our good friend from the fourth period. Ladies and gentlemen, his name is Dennis Bernstein. We also have with us here Adelphi's Assistant Athletic Director for Sports Information at Adelphi University, Ian Schraier. Ian, DB, welcome, fellas. Cannot thank you enough for coming back here. DB, this is the second time you're on here with us. And Ian, guys, how are the two of you?
I'm doing great, Double J. You know, look, you let me back on the show, so hey, it's going to be like, I'm Jewish, but it's like Christmas morning, right? It's going to be Christmas morning. We're going to have 5 gifts under the tree tomorrow, right? And it's just, look, this is a long time coming. Kudos to the Players Association and the NHL to make this happen. Everybody toed the line, did what they had to do and keep everybody safe and healthy. And I just can't wait. It's been, 4.5 months since we've seen hockey for real. Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. And Nick, you're here with us, diehard Islanders fan. Ian is a Rangers fan. So you got, and as we said, just off camera before, DB is also a native New Yorker. He's out on the West Coast in Los Angeles, but we're all New Yorkers here tonight, and I'm wearing my Islanders polo here just to try and fit in here. But really glad, again, that DB is here. Ian is here as well. And also, folks, just want to say as well, we're trying to get this graphic up here tomorrow morning starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on SiriusXM NHL Network Radio Channel 91, the hot stove powered by the fourth period. DB, Ryan Payton, and David Pagnotta will have a lot of hockey talk to start the morning off. And as DB said, it is the night before Christmas. So let's get things started. There's so much to talk about. And the first game, fellas, the first game tomorrow, Carolina and Ian Schreier's New York Rangers. Let's start off with DB because I want to see what we spoke about, or actually what I heard you on, I believe it was on Channel 91 with Boomer Gordon, and you had done the confidence pool. And yes. I actually just heard about an hour ago, actually, from PMAC. Ian Schraier knows him. I don't know if he got the invite, but our friend is doing a confidence pool, and I had no idea what it was. And he actually sent me. He's like, your friend Dennis Bernstein, he did it on the radio. So I listened to it, and I was like, oh, this is great. So I get perfect insight from my friend here. So talk a little bit about what you are really looking forward to in tomorrow's contest and what you saw in the exhibition from Carolina and the Rangers that could potentially think a little differently, maybe that you originally had thought with these two teams?
Well, I thought coming in that this was like baseball in April. Pitching's ahead of hitting, defense is in front of offense. And you look at the scores of the exhibition games, all but one was under 6 goals. So now the thing is, the seeding teams, they're under wraps. Are they really playing that hard? And what happens when you play hard, and then a team like Boston, Marchand gets injured? So I'm not sure I'm going to take away that much in a 2-1 game with the Rangers and Islanders. You would like to see a little bit more hitting, a little bit more rally, So I just think in this series, number one, Dougie Hamilton's absence in game 1 is going to be tough. And game 1 is so important, guys, because if you lose 1, you got to win 3 out of 4. And it's going to be a big task coming out of 4.5 months of not playing. Like, you're not sure about your chemistry of your team right now. So this is a huge game. It's going to come down to goaltending. I assume Igor is going to play in net for them. It wouldn't be the guy I would start. When I looked at Hank's numbers this season against Carolina, I think that was a major – I would have went with him. Plus the big picture, not just the series. Like, if you don't play Hank here and they lose the series, like, what's his mindset going into next season with 1 more year on his contract? So there's other issues, plus a team that is the 10 seed. This is not a favorite going in. I understand why they're playing Igor. He had a great end of the season. I understand. Look, if the big players are going to produce, if the Sebastian Ahos and Breadman and Mika Zibanejad are going to produce, it's going to be up to the secondary players like Teravainen or Ryan Strome. I think it's really going to be the depth. And I think on the defensive side of the puck for the Rangers, I think the key there is going to be the Stahl-Lindgren pairing. Like, can they shut down Carolina? So I think it's going to be an entertaining game. I do like the Rangers in the long series. because they played so well down the stretch. And I just think that Mika and Bredman can carry them to a series victory.
Well, let's hear it, Ian Schraier. You're the Rangers fan on here, so let's hear your thoughts if you can compete with DB.
I don't know if I could compete with DB on that level. I mean, he's got a little more insider information than I do. But, yeah, I agree with DB in his assessment with regards to the Lundqvist-Shesterkin, discussion. I would give Hank the first game. I mean, I think it's going to be tough to ask, if they go down 1-0, even without Dougie Hamilton playing tomorrow, to win 3 of the next 4. I mean, there's no home ice anymore. I mean, you throw the regular season series out. I mean, there's no better postseason than hockey playoffs. Like Dennis said, I'm a Jew myself, so it is like Christmas. It is like Christmas Eve. But I think the Rangers have really shown that. I mean, no one expected the Rangers in the playoffs this year. I know obviously they're being called the qualifiers, but to I think all fans, it still feels like it's postseason. I know they're a year early. I think you really can't underestimate the play, like DB was saying, of Mika Zibanejad, and obviously Artemi Panarin's been probably better than advertised. But going back to the point on the goaltending, I would definitely agree. I would give Hank the first game. I mean, Shesterkin's been incredible. You also have Georgiev there too. So, I mean, they're rolling with 3 goaltenders in the playoffs, and each one has been better than the rest. But just on playoff experience alone, I'm going to roll with Hank in the first game and see how he plays.
Yeah, it's so tough because especially, it was crazy where after the first goal, or the second goal actually, that Shesterkin had given up in the exhibition game, David Quinn pulled him right away, and then Hank had gone in. Really, really wild stuff. Nick Partain, your thoughts as you come on onto the show. Come on, let's hear your thoughts.
So I'm boldly going to go against these two guys. I'm actually going to say you have to finish Shesterkin game 1. He was your hot hand at the end. He was clearly the starting goaltender when the season was put on pause. Take that away from him now is a major hit to a guy whose confidence, you don't know exactly where it's going to be in a situation like this. If you bench him and he was clearly playing as the better goalie when it stopped, it doesn't send a great message. Plus, Hank is going to play. The Rangers have to play 3 games in 4 days to start this series. 2 goaltenders are going to play. Lundqvist is probably going to get either game 2 or game 3. So it's not as if you're not going to see him. It's not as if Shesterkin's going to play every single game. You're going to see both goalies. You got to come out with the hot hand because, like Dennis said, game 1 is huge. You play the better goalie. You give the guy who's given the best chance to win. It's not that big a disparity, but Shesterkin was unbelievable down the stretch. You got to give the kid game 1. He's earned it.
But Nick, hold on. You're not benching him for Thomas Greiss. You're benching him for Hank Lundqvist, the guy who's been the bellwether of the franchise for over a decade. It's not like it's an insult to the kid, and he's 21 years old to bounce back. So I get what you're saying because I agree with you. On the face of it, you look at the numbers, you look at the way they were playing great. But again, it was 4.5 months ago, right? And now I want to go with my veteran. So, but I get your point totally on that. And I wouldn't be shocked if Eagle was in net for game 1.
Well, I wouldn't take shots at Thomas Greiss. He's won a playoff series more recently than Hank has. So hold on with that one. It's been a while since Hank's been on the stage, remember?
Right.
So, but I see your point. There really isn't a wrong answer here, but I'm playing the better goalie game 1 in a series that's very important.
Throwing shots at TV, I love it. Go ahead.
I'm going to go back to Dennis's point before about how much stake we're really putting in these exhibition games. I mean, it's glorified preseason. I mean, listen, these guys haven't played in 4.5 months. They're still getting their legs underneath them. I mean, we've watched other sports restart. We're watching now the NHL restart. We've seen baseball restart. We've seen soccer restart. It's going to take time for these guys to find their legs. And I know Nick's smiling as I actually dropped in a little soccer reference. But, I mean, an interesting stat for you, DB was talking about how every game was under 6 goals. The Vegas Sportsbook was 12-0 and under in exhibition games, 12-0. So, Boston being down 3-0 to Columbus. I mean, Boston is looked at as a Stanley Cup contender right now. I'm not putting a lot of stake into these exhibition games. And DB, to go to your point about Mark Stahl, I know Stahl came off the ice yesterday in the game against the Islanders, so I'm not sure what his status is going to be for game 1 tomorrow. I mean, I think the player that really shined in the exhibition games, besides Kakko, for the Rangers was Jacob Trouba. And he was the off-season trade, the player that they were waiting, to finally become that top pair defenseman that they were hoping he'd be, and he really looked great yesterday.
Yeah, he played almost as good as Neil Piontek. No, just kidding.
Cracking some jokes here. Now, but you know what? But all 3 of you guys have said that a lot of these exhibition games, really, it doesn't matter because half these guys are all getting their legs under them. And That could be said obviously with Florida as well, where we heard Coach Q say or in the post game press conference that it was Sergei Bobrovsky that slowly got better throughout the contest. But DB, even without Victor Hedman, who's now on his way up to Toronto, and also without Steven Stamkos as well, because he's still nursing an injury, 5-0 shutout. Like, okay, I get it's exhibition, but should there be a little bit of worry with the Florida Panthers? And I don't know, maybe a little bit of, I don't want to say hope with Tampa Bay, but maybe a little bit of worrisome in Sunrise.
No, there should be a lot of worry. This team underachieved all season. If it was a normal playoff, they wouldn't have been in. They didn't play for 4.5 months, and that's the effort you gave. That was terrible. Brayden Point blew by Matheson on one of those goals. That was awful. And Q really was cool about it. He just basically said, yeah, guys stood around, stuff like that. I'd be very worried because the one rat about his team is they don't care. And they didn't look like they cared. And then they got to play 2 days later. It just, to me, that was shockingly bad, right? You got to try. The one guy I give credit to was Boyle, because he picked a fight with Sergachev, and that goes back a couple of years too. It wasn't their first fight, but yeah, JJ, I'm really concerned about the Panthers because one rap about that team was really talented, don't really have a good defensive system, don't want to play defense, and they underachieve. And that's the effort without Stamkos and Hedman. Like, that's really, really – I'm worried if I'm a Panthers fan. They got to turn it around really, really fast. But it doesn't look like there's in their DNA. And if they perform like that in the postseason here, then you got to change the mix here. I know they have a lot of good players on this team. I think maybe 5 or 6 first-round picks. The mix isn't going to work. If this is the effort they're going to give in this series, if I'm Dale Town, I really got to change the ship next season.
Yeah, Nick, what's your thought with Florida after we actually spoke about it a couple of weeks ago on our hockey special, and obviously we no bias, but we all chose the Islanders. But we look at some of the stats here from Florida, and they did rank in the top 10 in goals scored per game with 3.23. But again, you come up with a big bagel in an exhibition game, and exactly what DB said. Who knows? Maybe we might have to blow it up.
See, I understand not scoring a goal in the exhibition. If you really watch the Islander Ranger game, the Islanders really weren't pressing to score goals. They kind of looked like they were going through the motions offensively. Nobody was playing full speed going forward, but they focused on defense. The thing about Florida is you giving up 5 goals is pretty par for the course for their season. They were a bad defensive team, but the biggest problem that come from that game is that Bobrovsky still doesn't look right. You gave him a massive contract for a lot of years to be the guy to come in that when the defense isn't playing well, he saves you a few goals. The kind of guy that in a series like this, if he gets hot, should be able to save it for you, and he looked abysmal again like he has all season. If he's not good, it's not only going to have them get knocked out of this series very quickly, it's going to set the entire franchise back for a long time because you're paying him a lot of money for 6 more seasons, and if he's this bad, that completely blows up what you're able to do going forward. So effort-wise, absolutely terrible. Goaltending, terrible. Defense, par for the course, terrible. And you don't score any goals, you couldn't have looked worse in that game. And all the confidence should be with the Islanders right now to say we can't possibly lose 3 games to this team, right?
Ian, your thoughts on this?
I mean, my confidence in the Florida Panthers is about as much as the attendance they draw every night in summer. I mean, I'm kind of going to jump over here to the Isles here for a second. I mean, I think Nick and DB really hit the point there with respect to Florida. I mean, I'm really expecting this to be a sweep for the Islanders. They're healthy. I mean, that's a huge piece. I mean, I know before, and I know you guys spoke about it 3 weeks ago, and I commented on the page about it, about how this team had such a scoring outage before the break, before the 4-month layoff. And for me, with the Islanders, I mean, they're healthy. They got Pulak back. You got the entire 4th line back with Clutterbuck and Cizikas. And this team can just really go at you a whole bunch of different ways. And for me, in comparison between the Islanders and the Panthers, you're talking about 2 completely different sides of the spectrum. The Islanders were there last year. I just don't see where there's a real competition in this series.
Yeah, that's I mean, after, again, as we said, as DB said, as we all said, that it's a little scary. And as I did say earlier, 3.23 was the goals against for Sergei Bobrovsky. And also, DB, I don't know if you knew this. I mean, obviously you did, or I figure you did. Florida ranks 29th in goals allowed during the regular season. That's insane. And look at the names that are on the back end of the defense, on the back end of Florida.
Yep, Ekblad, Matheson. And the thing is, you bring in a guy like you. Look, I get Bob Bogner. It didn't perform for him, right? And he didn't do much better, even though he's going to get an extension probably in San Jose. But when you bring Q in, I mean, where's the system? There's no system. Where's the try? I mean, if I was him, I would have closed that door and said, look, I know it's an exhibition game, but what are you guys doing? What are you thinking? And I think what it is, and we keep coming back to Bobrovsky. Nick made a good point about, like, there could be a disaster. I don't think going forward that you can pay a goalie $10 million a year anymore, right? I mean, Bobrovsky got it. Carey Price got it. Vasilevsky got it. I just don't think in a flat cap going forward for the next couple of seasons, $10 million for a goalie when this is the result and this is the risk, I don't think you can do that anymore. Maybe 5, 6, 7 million for a guy like Ben Bishop. I think he's making 7, but to go to 10 million for a goaltender, I just in this environment, I don't see it. And again, look, they could just turn around and say this was an exhibition game, but again, it's their DNA. Like, nobody shot when they laid that egg. Was anybody on the show surprised? No. Like, if there's one team that's going to lay an egg, it's the Florida Panthers. And they were right to their DNA. So, again, look, they could rise up and beat the Islanders, but I just think you mentioned the Islanders' health. They could be physical. Ross the Boss Johnson might get some game, right? So I just think that everything lines up for the Islanders here. So I think I'm not sure it's a sweep, Ian, but I do like them to win this series because I just think the mindset of the two teams are entirely different ends of the spectrum at this point.
So I don't mean to interrupt for one quick second because I wanted to go to Ian for a quick second, but Nick knows the reason why I'm pausing. And DB, I got to ask you this because Nick is a diehard Ross the Boss Johnston fan, and I need to ask you your thought on seeing Ross Johnston play on that third line left wing. What were your thoughts about that?
I think it's great. I loved it. When Barry put him out there, I'm like, okay, he rarely played, right? And now he's out there. I'm like, why not? I mean, because that's the type of team you want to play him against. The team that's probably emotionally frail. So if he comes out, on the second or third shift and starts laying a couple people out, then they're really going to turtle, right? I mean, that's the intimidation factor that you can still use. Forget the fourth line, which is great. I think you put a guy like Ross out there, he's not going to hurt the team. I think you can get away with it in this series to just set a tone. In the first game, maybe the first period, he may not play, but maybe 8 or 9 minutes. But I think a tone setter, that's the type of player that you need. And I think it was a great move by Barry to throw him out there.
Well, and the reason why, and again, so DB, the reason why I had asked you that is because Nick cannot stand Ross Johnston, so I wanted to get, I wanted to get his reaction from you doing that. So I had to poke him for a little bit, and that's what friends do. Nick Partain, your response to DB.
All right, so we can talk about all the options the Islanders had for that spot. He was slim pickings when he's got picking. I mean, you got Andrew Ladd, you got Michael Dow Cole, you have Tom Kuhnhackl. Right. You're not going to pop at any of those guys. So it's hard to make a wrong decision. And if he's going with Johnston, I'm assuming he has knowledge that I don't. I'm assuming he's seen things in camp maybe that I don't. But when the season was going on, I didn't like Ross Johnston in the lineup. He didn't fit the system. For a guy who plays physically, he tended to go outside of the system too often. He would take bad penalties instigating when you don't have to be as aggressive as he was. He wasn't great defending, which is something you have to be good at to play for Barry Trotz. He didn't even put up great offensive numbers for a guy who has shown skill and skating ability for his size. He's a prototypical player that if he puts it all together, he has some upside. But he's just never put it together within a system correctly to take advantage of his talents. So I've usually been against playing him. And you know what? We could see in game one, the Islanders go with an extra defenseman instead of playing that Ross Johnston on the third line. I've seen that coached by people, and it makes a lot of sense. The Islanders have some defensemen that are older, Johnny Boychuk. They have a guy in Adam Pelech who's coming off a serious injury. You might want to play an extra defenseman, limit their minutes, flatten their minutes out a little bit for a series that's going to have 5 games after not playing for 4 months. Instead of having a forward that's only going to play, like Dennis said, 8 or 9 minutes isn't that much for another winger to cover up on the forward group. So we don't know for sure if he's even going to play, but if he looked the best in camp and he earned the spot, I'm not against it, but I'm leery of a guy who's played outside the system too often. He needs to rein himself in a little bit. I understand being aggressive and hitting, but be careful. Don't hurt your team. Help them.
Yeah, you made a good point, Nick, about the options on that wing. I think that's why he got ice time against the Rangers, because the other options aren't really Like there's not a clear-cut option there. So we'll see.
It's absolutely wild to see, and again, that's again. I wanted to bring on DB because I know you can definitely interact with these guys, and it really is so far a lot of fun. Just 20 minutes in, Ian, your thoughts on what these two had to talk about with the Islanders, and was it a mistake with Ross Johnston, or could we have seen Andrew Ladd potentially? Come in just because of his name, because there were trade rumors floating around at the deadline.
Well, I'm sure Nick Partain would love to see Andrew Ladd on the edge of on one end of a trade. From that conversation that I got to be a part of 3 weeks ago. But I mean, you've also got a winger there, Tom Kunak, like Nick was saying. He played against the Penguins last year. He played against the Canes. Obviously has experience from playing in Pittsburgh. I believe he even won a cup in Pittsburgh. So you've got enough experience there that I don't think you need to go to a Johnston-like player. I mean, Barry Trotz has so many options now that this team, and I'm going to really focus on the word with the Islanders, is health. I mean, they've got so much depth and so much depth, in so many areas that, especially on that side, on that line, that I'm not so sure that that's the way they need to go.
Yeah, it's like I said, there's different choices that you have to go, but really the biggest question mark on this Islanders team is not defense. Well, now I guess it would be, because now we're trying to figure out where Andy Green fits in. If he fits in, if now there were rumors that we heard, DB, about Nick Leddy potentially being taken out, Johnny Boychuk being taken out, which to me doesn't make any bit of sense because, well, maybe the leadership, because Nick Leddy really hasn't fit in since Barry Trotz have come in. What do you say to those people, or I guess the Twitter people that we've seen say those possibly ridiculous lines?
Well, look, I got to put Nick Leddy because the one challenge the team's going to have is scoring, right? And he's a gifted skater. He's a gifted offensive player. So, and I think the system will allow for that player to be not so great defensively. I think that the support he'll get from everybody else, I think, should be good enough. I'd be concerned to take out any sort of offense from this team. But look, you can talk about the defense all you want. It's number 13. Like, number 13, you got to come through. He has to be the best player in the series. Although we all, I think, agree that the Islanders should win the series, he's really got to go back to the Matt Barzal we saw a couple of seasons ago. This is the time. If he wants to, it's right now. Right? This is go time for Matt. So I think that, and he should get opportunities against the team. Look, he's set up to win. The team's set up to win. Like, as Nick said, like, this team doesn't have any structure they're playing against. He's going to get plenty of opportunities. He's got to finish and be the leader on offense. And then they have enough defense. They have enough structure to win the series. Again, if I'm concerned, not about this series, but if they're going to make a deep run, 13's got to be the guy.
Yeah. Let's keep moving forward here. As, again, for those that are just joining us, we cannot thank the fourth period's Dennis Bernstein enough for joining us here. 23 minutes past the top of the hour, 8:23 p.m. here on the East Coast, 5:23 p.m. out in Los Angeles, right here on the Eastern Observer. Thank you all for tuning in. The day before hockey starts, or as DB said, the night before Christmas. So a lot of good stuff for hockey fans. Now, we were just talking about earlier, guys, about how, these, again, and repetitive, the exhibition games sometimes don't mean a lot. Now, DB, I'll start with you here. Chicago 4, St. Louis 0. Obviously, St. Louis defending Cup champs. We shouldn't be that worried. Should there be some upside with Chicago maybe heading into a big matchup against Edmonton? Because as we've heard on your show a few times, this is the time that Edmonton needs to either put up or shut up.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good for Chicago since I picked Chicago in 4. So I think that was a really good showing. I think with Chicago, it was a question of, Corey Crawford healthy. Like, that was a must. DeHaan's back, right? But to me, it was like the give a crack threshold. The guys like Taves and Kane and Keith really want to play, being the 12th seed in this tournament. Are they motivated? They look motivated. Kirby Dach, again, keeps on ascending. He was really good in that game. I think that's what I wanted to see from that game. I'm not worried about St. Louis. I think St. Louis will be in the conference final regardless. Adding Tarasenko to that group, they're ready to defend the Cup. I'm not worried about them. I like what I saw from Chicago with respect to the trifactor. They really wanted to win that game. They wanted to play hard. They played hard for 60 minutes, and that's what I see. Plus, all the pressure's on Edmonton. I know there's no highest advantage, but they know that arena. They've played on that surface for 2 years, right? Connor and Leon are two of the best players in the league. Like, it's time for them to rise and shine in the postseason, and they're playing a 12 seed who really didn't play that well. But again, if Taves and Kane and Keith – Kubalik scored another goal the other night. If the two guys who have won in the playoffs want to show the two youngsters this is how you do it in the postseason, I'd be really, really concerned. And I'm not sure that Mikko Koskinen and net is going to be the answer. And if they lose game one, they're going to go to Mike Smith, who had a really good series in Calgary last season. He's the best thing they had on the ice last season in the postseason. I'm not trusting Mike Smith to win me a series. So, I again, that's my upset. I don't think the 5-12 series is going to be a match at all in the East. I think the Chicago Blackhawks have a legitimate shot to beat Edmonton for the reasons I just said.
Ian Schraier, let's hear yours, and then we'll get to the Chicago Blackhawk fan up there.
I mean, I'm jumping on the Chicago bandwagon also. I mean, it's hard not to. The experience speaks for itself. DB mentioned the three names: Taves, Kane, and Crawford. And I think we mentioned 3 weeks ago that we say this every year with the Oilers. It's every year that they're the number one draft pick. Every year they take the top guy in the draft, and every year we still wait for that guy to become what he's supposed to be. Obviously, with Connor McDavid, they hit it right. But with respect to the question that surrounds the Oilers all the time is, where do they go after McDavid and Draisaitl? And I just think there's just too many weapons on the Blackhawks side and too much experience to really ignore that.
It's absolutely wild because just a few years ago, we heard that after Brandon Saad or after Artemi Panarin, after Taves and Kane, who really was under there. Now we're starting to see, as DB said, Kirby Dach. Also now we cannot forget Alex DeBrincat as well, who has bursted onto the scene this year. Nick Partain. Your second favorite team is the Chicago Blackhawks. Let's hear what's going to be going on in the Windy City.
Well, we'll start with St. Louis really quick. This game meant nothing for them. They have the warm-up series coming up afterwards. They've already advanced. They don't care. That game meant nothing to them. They have 3 more warm-up games to get themselves into shape. They have possibly the best coach in the league, one of the best goalies in the league, leadership. Tarasenko comes back. They'll be fine. There's no worry there. Dennis hit the absolute nail on the head with Chicago, though. It all comes down to Corey Crawford. We can talk about Taves, we can talk about Kane, we can talk about Keith and all their experience. That'll all go out the window if Corey Crawford has a bad series the way he did a while back against Nashville in that first round when he had to be pulled and they had to win the series without him and then get him back in there later to win the cup. So that's what it's going to come down to. Corey Crawford looked good. He looked healthy. But there's no Robin Leonard behind him anymore. It rests on the shoulders of Corey Crawford to get the job done and play above average against a high-scoring team. He needs to be able to step up and save a few goals to give Chicago the edge.
And also Calvin DeHaan comes back as well. Thankfully, as we did say, I know Nick is definitely a little excited about this. We're not seeing Brent Seabrook because sometimes, it would be, what'd you call it, a liability at times, or it wouldn't be good to have him on the ice because he's just getting so old and he's so fragile, honestly, now.
He was a huge part
say it again, Nick.
Sorry. He was a huge part of 3 cup teams. We love him for that, but he's way past the hump. He really shouldn't even be playing anymore. I don't think he's a playable defenseman in this league. It's a shame to see it, but he just can't handle it anymore.
Do you agree with that, DB, or do you think that he still has one last go-round next year?
Yeah, he might try, but he's so banged up, and that would be the wrong team to play him against. Maybe if it was a grind team like a Columbus or a St. Louis, but against Edmonton, and you ask him to defend not only Connor and Leon, but guys like Anthony Ciu and Tyler. And no, it's the wrong matchup. Even if he was healthy, I would have concerns about playing him with respect to the way Nick's hit the nail on the head, the way his game deteriorated. So maybe it'd be great for him to be in the room, maybe a healthy scratch, but to put him in against the Edmonton Oilers with all that speed, that's just it would be the wrong move.
So tough, yeah. And now we head to the 8:00 game on Saturday night, tomorrow night. Where, as we did say to DB last time, we're forgetting the days, we're forgetting the months. Every day just seems like it's the same. That's exactly what it is. So tomorrow night,
Groundhog Day, Joey. Groundhog Day.
Exactly. 8:00 tomorrow night, Montreal and Pittsburgh, and this on DB's pool or confidence pool was an 8. Let's hear it, DB, because you have zero faith in Montreal.
If I could pick Pittsburgh in 2, I would pick Pittsburgh in 2. I can't. Look, Nick Suzuki is the second-line center. He's going to play 20 minutes a night in this series. He's going to match up either against 87 or Malkin. You can't win. And you got Kakanyemi, probably the third-line center. You probably got Max on the fourth line right now, Max Domi, because he was late coming to camp. The only way is if both Jarry and Murray are busters in this series. And I don't see it. Now, I will say one thing about Pittsburgh, even though I'm picking them in 3. They lost 8 of 11 down the stretch. Philly passed them. They lost the exhibition game. And you guys know they've lost 8 of the last 9 in the postseason. If they lose game 1, I'm not sure. But the matchups really don't favor it. You got Brett Kulak on the second pair. If Pittsburgh's feeling it and they want to play, they look healthy, they look motivated. Of course, they're going to be motivated anytime they get on the ice against Philly. But with adding, with Jake Guentzel coming back, with Zucker now on the team, I just don't see it. Just pound for pound, there's just a discrepancy between the 2 rosters. And again, Montreal shouldn't have been in it, and they were selling guys at the deadline, right? I mean, they traded away Kovalchuk. They made a couple of trades. I think this is the biggest overmatch on talent, and I don't think that Carey Price has had that season. Like, if he was having a Connor Hellebuck season, I'd give him a shot. But he didn't have a Connor Hellebuck season, and he was one of the guys who was hesitant to get on the plane. And now, last week, he said, we all got to play over our heads to win this series. I question if he really cares. I really question if he really wants to play that badly. And I just don't see an advantage for Montreal. So I would be totally shocked, and that's why I have them as my 8-point choice in the confidence pool. I just don't see a path to victory for Montreal.
Nick Partain, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, Montreal's really going to pay the price here because they're going to get scored on a lot. I mean,
look at you.
Especially watching that game and seeing how good Jake Guentzel looked. It's just not fair anymore for this team. He came out and immediately looked like a star winger again. We've seen him as a postseason player. He's one of those guys you can peg in right now is going to be elite from minute 1 to add to Crosby, Malkin, Zucker, Letang, all these superstar players that Pittsburgh has. There's no way that they're going to be able to win even a game, I don't think, Montreal. It's going to be a real rough series for their fan base. But I hope Nick Suzuki at least holds his own. It's nice to see an ascending young player get a chance to go up in a big matchup like this, maybe prove he's got more than we think, but it's just going to be way too much for Montreal to handle. It's going to be over real quick.
And you know what's really sad before we get to Ian, too? Remember the days when it was the Jonathan Drouin for Mikhail Sergachev, that trade, and everyone was saying, oh my goodness, this could really put us, I don't want to say over the top, but to line up at one point with Max Pacioretty, and obviously that didn't work at all because now Drouin, DB, what line is Drouin even on? He's all the way down, I think.
No, I think he's up with Phil Deneau. I think it's going to be Deneau. Oh no, I'm sorry, Tatar. It's probably on the second line.
Oh, right.
The second, yeah, it's Tatar, Dano, and Brendan Gallagher is the top line.
Yeah.
Again, that's not Phil Deneau would be a great third line center on a championship team. Yeah. That's what he is. I know people stumping for him for the Selke. He might get it one day. He's a really good third line center on a championship team, not a first line center. Are you kidding me? Like that's scary. And even if he holds down Sid, what's Gino going to do against Suzuki or Kakanyemi or Max Domi? Again, it's just the overmatch is there. So look, I think, and Nick said it too, I think if he gets 20 minutes a night, experienced Nick Suzuki in postseason against these quality players, I think it's a win. Kakanyemi gets some experience in the postseason, fine. If they lose the series and get luck into Lafreniere, then it's a win for them. But you got to manage the expectations if you're a Habs fan against what they have up against them right now.
Yeah, and also don't forget too the oft injured Shea Weber, Victor Mete as well. It's just that back end also is very questionable too and very fragile as well because we saw I think last year Shea Weber, he missed a lot of the season. Victor Mete also was injured in February too. He wasn't slated to come back. And now he's back, thankfully, but really that doesn't really give him that much of an advantage.
The third pairing defense is Xavier Ouellet and Victor Mete.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Yeah. And that's with Ben Cherry having a great season, too. I mean, the matchups don't really – it's. I would be shocked if they won a game.
Ian Schraier, your thoughts?
I don't think there's really too much else to say with respect to this series. I think Dennis and Nick really kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, I kind of have a question for DB, really, is I'm expecting, obviously, Pittsburgh to win pretty easily. But my question is more, what do you see long-term now for Pittsburgh? I mean, do you feel that their age is starting to get to them? Do you see them making a long run in the playoffs, or could this be a win one series and done the next?
It comes down to the goaltending, Ian. I really think it comes down to the goaltending next series. What happens? I don't think they're better than any of the 4 teams above them. I'd love to see the seedings hold and see Philly and Pittsburgh play. That's the series I'd love to see, because I love Philly. I think they're an emerging team. I just think they have the right coach in AV. Even though you're a Ranger fan, you might disagree.
I like AV a lot. I did.
Yeah, they're right there. I don't think they're going to climb over these teams this year. They could surprise people, rise up. But I think Pittsburgh, they're a little long in the tooth. They always seem to have injury factors involved. There's always a major player getting injured on that team. And again, look, the last 2 playoff seasons when they went up against a quality team in Washington or a team that played good defensively in the Islanders, they didn't win any games. So I think they're glamorous. They should win the series easily. But again, I wouldn't pick them over any of the 4 seeds right now, the way they're principally constituted. But you never know. If Sid and Gino rise up, they could have a shot. But again, I think it's going to – look, one of those 2 goalies is not going to be on that team next year. They got cap issues, so they're basically playing to stay in Pittsburgh. It's probably going to be Jarry because he's the cheaper option. But if they don't get good goaltending in the following series, it would be it could be another Washington or Islanders series for them if they don't get good goaltending.
That would be something for sure. The final game of tomorrow night, before DB definitely has to get some rest for tomorrow's show. Winnipeg and Calgary. We saw Winnipeg. As we were saying earlier, DB, about Neil Pionk, or we also lost Dustin Byfuglien. They lost Tyler Myers as well. Jacob Trouba as well. And Kevin Cheveldayoff has done an absolutely fantastic job retooling that back end, because at one point following, and I remember, I think Nick remembers too, because I believe I said it right here. Once Jacob Trouba was traded, and I said, how is Dustin Byfuglien going to be able to hold this down? And then when Tyler Myers signed a deal in Vancouver, I had no hope. And Kevin Cheveldayoff really proved me wrong, and a lot of the possibly Jets fans wrong. What do you think of this series starting tomorrow?
Well, when I look at Winnipeg, I look at them. There's 2 teams I look at that are very similar: Winnipeg and Columbus. Because remember, last year they had some success. Then everybody left. So both teams, hey, you're going to suck this year, right? Everybody left Columbus. They shot the moon. They won a playoff series, and then everybody left. Same thing with Winnipeg. Your blue line's decimated, right? And then you get into the season, you start playing, and everybody gets hurt. Right? And they say, well, watch this. So when I watched the coach, who's the Winnipeg coach?
Maurice.
When I watched Paul Maurice's media availability on, I think, Wednesday, it convinced me they're going to win. Because, look, we've dealt with adversity all year, right? Winnipeg, it's one guy. It's the Vezina winner. It's Connor Hellebuyck. And he looked good again. Okay, and I just don't like Calgary. I know they went through a lot with respect to Bill Peters, but look, they don't know who their goaltender is. Is it Cam Talbot? It's probably going to be Talbot. David Ritchie signed to a contract. He's not going to be the starter. What's going on with Johnny Gaudreau? And early in preseason, he was skating away from the main group. He didn't play well this season. Sean Monahan didn't play well. And you look at Giordano's numbers between this season and last, he fell off a cliff. He was like an 80-point scorer in last season, won the Norris, hit 30 points this year. So I just don't like the grouping there. Their best player on the team is Matthew Tkachuk. I think it'll be a long series. I don't like Calgary here. I like Winnipeg to win it just based on Connor Hellebuyck. I think he'll make enough saves against Calgary to win this series for them. After that, I like their offense. I don't think they're more than a one-round winner at this point in time. But I do like Winnipeg over Calgary on the back of Connor Hellebuyck.
Ian and Nick, your thoughts. Start with Ian first.
I really like this series. When I saw the pairings for the qualifiers, this was a series that really stood out to me because these are 2 teams that are really hungry right now. I mean, you're talking about 2 teams that had first-round exits, Winnipeg falling to the eventual Cup champions in St. Louis, and Calgary the expectations for Calgary last year were through the roof, and ended up falling in 5 to Colorado. To me, both these teams are hungry, but again, to DB's point, it's Connor Hellebuck. I mean, I don't see how he doesn't win the Vezina. It's just, I think he makes enough saves. I really do. But I think both teams are just incredibly hungry right now. They have Kachuk, but they still have Johnny Gaudreau. They still have Giordano. Their numbers are way down from normal. But I mean, these teams have also had 4 months off, so we'll see how they come out and play.
That's true. And exactly before we get to Nick, too, we've said it every single week that we've spoken about hockey, is that all the analytics, all of the numbers, everything, it's almost like a brand new season. Nick, your thoughts?
So you gave all the credit to Kevin Chilivio, whatever his last name is. It's a brutal one to pronounce. Regardless, I'm giving the credit to Winnipeg to Paul Maurice. I don't think they have any talent on that defense that he gave them or gifted them after all those guys left. I'm saying that the coach was able to cobble this together with all the injuries, with all the guys leaving, and somehow had a respectable goals allowed, with Connor Hellebuck obviously holding it down, being one of the best goalies in the league this season. But give Paul Maurice credit for keeping this team together and getting them back into the playoffs with how many good teams they had in that division to go up against. And then when it comes down to it, it's a short series, 5 instead of 7. One team has an absolutely elite goaltender. One team has who knows what. One team had a coach really come through this year and do a bang-up job. The other team had a coach that really let them down, and all their best players had down years. It's just two teams going in different directions. I can't imagine Calgary coming out of this with a win. I feel like that'd be a major upset. But I agree, neither of these teams are destined to go very far. Winnipeg's not talented enough to go further than this, and Calgary doesn't have it together enough to go further than this.
Don't forget, too, DB, also, I want to say this one last thing, also, is that there was a trade, too, with Dylan DeMello as well from Ottawa, and he really was not a part of that team, and really he's come through and he has made, I don't want to say his name known, but he hasn't played great, and this was also a quote from, I believe, Chevladeoff, or I don't know if it was, or maybe Paul Maurice, one or the other, was that he's not doing great things, but he's doing good enough things to make sure that he holds that defense down.
Yeah, and that's what you need in the playoffs. You need 23 guys. It's not going to, unless you're McDavid or Draisaitl, you're not gonna, or a Crosby, you're not carrying, especially Winnipeg. You need all 23 guys in. You need everybody in, not making mistakes, being responsible defensively. You have to do it as a group, right? There's just not enough talent there. And I just think that those are the little glue guys that come in and make differences, maybe not on the scoreboard, but put together, you craft a third liner with a guy like Dylan DeMello. So that's what you look at. It could be an under-the-radar acquisition for them. But again, I think there's enough talent on that team if Patrick Laine is feeling it. And we always forget about Blake Wheeler. He's one of the most underrated players, I think, in the league, other than maybe Huberdeau. But I just like that team because of what Nick said. I think you can never give this coach enough credit because you know what? In another season, they're a 13 seed, not a 9 seed. And they got a puncher's chance because of Hellebuck. And I just like them, but I agree with Nick. I just don't see there's too many holes in that lineup to think that they could rise up and beat one of the top 4 seeds in the next round.
Yeah. Really, really crazy stuff. Cannot wait for tomorrow. It is the night before Christmas, 12 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, 9 a.m. Oh, my goodness, 9 a.m. Pacific is going to be Carolina and the New York Rangers. But also do not forget, first, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific time is going to be the Hot Stove powered by the Fourth Period with DB, host Ryan Payton, and also David Pagnotta. DB, I cannot thank you enough for joining me here, joining us 3 here, and always a pleasure to see you, sir. And
yeah, great discussion, boys. I appreciate it. Can't wait. I got to go to sleep now because I got to get up at 6 a.m. to prep for the show.
There you go, DB. Listen, and also another thing, too, I love to see Authentic not too far from here down at
I got the Authentic shirt on. Let's go.
Oh, I love it.
Perfect.
Yeah, so just to say also, because Nick is also a horse guy, DB has his own horse, Authentic, and he's going to be racing in the Kentucky Derby. Really, really cool stuff. And he also won the Haskell Stakes, correct?
He won the Haskell Stakes, yeah, last Saturday, or 2 Saturdays ago.
Really,
yes, it's a good time for me. But look, hockey's coming back, so can't wait for tomorrow.
Really good stuff. DB, go get some rest. We'll be in touch. Thank you so much again for coming on, and enjoy tomorrow.
Thanks, gents. Appreciate it. Have a great night.
All right, guys. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Dennis Bernstein. Nick, Ian, what'd you think on that? That was we had a little bit of an insider, if you will, someone different.
He was great, lively. He came at me when he didn't agree with me. That was awesome. Excellent person to have on.
I just love the insider information. It's great, obviously this time of the year. I mean, usually we'd be talking about it in April, but it's just great to be talking hockey and great to be getting excited for playoffs. It's going to be a fun time.
Yeah, it's really absolutely crazy, but we did have a little bit of a time limit with DB because of his show early tomorrow morning. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, the Hot Stove powered by the Fourth Period will be on at a special time tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. Pacific on Sirius XM NHL Network Radio Channel 91. For more information, please log on to SiriusXM.com. Really, really good stuff. Let's keep it moving forward. So I do want to say with hockey, I kind of made a little graphic here. I know Ian's not really a part of it because that wasn't a part of the show a few weeks ago. But you can see here, I know it's not really great Photoshop skills. I know Ian definitely has better ones than I do. But listen,
don't give me that much credit, Joey. Don't.
listen. We're learning and we're taking our sweet time at St. Francis to get Photoshop up to par. So
I mean, what a surprise! Tyler Adele took the Hurricanes. What a shock!
Exactly. There you go. But also, you see, Nick took the Rangers. Nick took the Maple Leafs. Nick was the only one also to take the Preds as well. So a lot of good things that we're going to be talking about. But really, though, folks, there's a lot more sports to speak about, and there was a lot of controversy this week. And that kind of had to start off with Major League Baseball, fellas. And, in the beginning of the week, we found out that there was an outbreak. And from where? That was called Miami, Florida. And the Miami Marlins had a couple of people in their traveling party that rumored to have come from Atlanta, Georgia. They did not quarantine, and they were a part of the traveling party. And unfortunately, there were multiple games that were postponed, that were canceled, that were moved, that were changed. So it became a domino effect, fellas, where we saw now each doubleheader will now be 7 innings. I figure we're going back to, me and Ian's days at the NCAA level. What the hell's going on here? But it kind of has to be when you're only playing a 60-game season. And now we're also hearing that there could be a possibility of some of these games might not even be made up if there's no time, and it could be the highest win percentage could go on to the playoffs. I know Nick's thoughts on this because, again, that's usually how good friends think of it. But, Ian, I want to hear your thought on this because to me, it's an absolute dumpster fire what's going on in Major League Baseball.
With respect to baseball right now, I don't even know how to put it into words right now, what's really going on with respect to the COVID-19 outbreak. I mean, there was a number that came out earlier today, and working 15 years in collegiate athletics, it's really bothering me that we're instituting collegiate baseball and softball rules into professional sports. I understand why. I understand the reason as to why we want to try to limit exposure. It's just adding fuel to a 4-alarm fire is what it's doing. It's really, I think they came out with a stat today that said the Marlins are accounting right now for 20 of the 29 positive COVID-19 cases right now in the country, or I should say in Major League Baseball because we have to include Toronto. So, right now, when are we expecting the Marlins to really get back to play here? It's 7-inning doubleheaders. They're supposed to play 40 games against the NL East. They're supposed to play 20 games against the American League East. And if it's coming down to winning percentage, how many games are the Marlins really playing? And how does that also, in retrospect, how does that also affect the other teams in their respective in those divisions? Are we going to be granting a division title to a team that's 15-4? It worries me. I don't know if you guys saw the updated story that came out today that said that Manfred is now pointing the finger at Tony Clark from the MLB Players Association saying that basically I'm going to pass the responsibility over to you to make sure that we're being safe. Well, aren't you the commissioner of Major League Baseball? You've already dug yourself with this entire situation, an inescapable hole. You're struggling to get yourself out. And now this huge domino falls today about, oh, I don't want any part of it. Tony Clark can handle it. Well, I mean, you guys spent how many months waiting to come to the table just to try to get baseball back, and now you don't want to take any responsibility for COVID-19 at all, with respect, So for me, we've seen it affect the Nationals, we've seen it affect the Blue Jays, we've seen it affect the Yankees and the Orioles schedules. When are these games being made up? I mean, I know this seems like a constant rant, but at the same time, I was looking forward to baseball coming back. I couldn't wait. I was excited. I'm like, you know what, this is going to work. And now looking back 2 weeks, it's not working. It's not working. There's too many flaws. There's too many people potentially being exposed. I just don't see how it's working right now.
It's bad also too, because we didn't even say what the most recent postponement was, which was Cardinals Brewers, because there was, I believe, one positive staff. I don't know if it was a staffer or a player. I believe it was a staffer.
It was a staffer, yeah.
Yeah, it was a staff personnel person from the St. Louis Cardinals who all of a sudden tested positive. So now we're seeing games all around the country. Now it's starting to trickle over into the Midwest, get postponed. And I'm really, fellas, I got to tell you, from what the numbers that we've seen all across the country, I'm very surprised that, and again, knock on wood, wherever wood is, which would be here. But, we have not seen Oakland, San Diego, Los Angeles, the Angels and the Dodgers, the Giants. That's 5 teams there in California that, thank God, so far have been able to stay healthy. But for how much longer, Nick Partain, do we think?
Well, first of all, no one's seeing this as clearly as I am. This was obviously a scheme by the Marlins. They went 2-1. It was never going to get better than this. They got 67% Lock that thing in, baby. They don't want to play anymore. That's it. They can win the division now. They've already locked it up. So why keep continuing? Might as well start getting guys tested positive, fake it, do whatever you got to do. This is their high water mark for the next 10 years. They got it. But in a realistic sense, when you have bad leadership, bad things happen. It's weird. Rob Manfred, once again, has butchered another situation. It might be Tony Clark and the players' fault right now that the Marlins had some positive tests because they didn't quarantine and didn't handle this correctly. But if we weren't in this position, if Rob Manfred would have solved the problem months ago, we could have had baseball started a while ago. They could have had proper testing procedures, proper quarantining procedures already in place. This was all slapped together way too late, way too haphazardly, way too condensed. It was all a major miss by Major League Baseball to get this thing ready to go. The players were clearly the ones bargaining better than the league was. It was always a battle to try and get the league to even come to the table and make any concessions whatsoever. They had their hearts set on 60 games. They had their hearts set on every little thing they wanted, and they weren't budging.
Well, the one thing that I have to disagree with there from the players is that they said no to the bubble. And when you say no to the bubble, you now have to take matters into your own hands. So with that being said, you now have to be a responsible adult and say, okay, I'm going to follow the common sense rules that we are hearing, not only from the government, from the CDC, from wherever it may be, but because Major League Baseball did not take that initiative. And as Nick said, bad leadership causes bad problems. Yes, granted, but then also the players also shot themselves in the foot now because they had a chance to say, okay, at first we saw about the salaries. Okay, the players said no. Then the players said yes. Then it came back here. Okay, so now Major League Baseball is giving you guys one more shot. And now you guys should be the one to remember to, make sure that you don't screw it up. Because, again, when you don't produce, when there's no supply or there's no demand, you're not going to get your money. So if Major League Baseball all of a sudden cancels and then someone says, well, now I'm not going to get my money, well, then now I'm going to point fingers to you and say, well, guess what? You said no to a bubble. You did not take care of yourself. And now the problem here also is that now you're just destroying television. You're destroying stuff here. And really, just stay in a freaking hotel. It's not that difficult. Just follow the proper protocol. And you know what? And again, going back to what Nick said, yes, everything was botched. Everything was flawed. But you have to realize here is that you have to use your leadership for some of these players, but also the common sense to say, I'm going to follow the right rules. Some of these guys have families. Some of these guys are going home to their families, okay? And they might be, let's say walking to the parking lot. You never know. Someone could be walking on the sidewalk at Yankee Stadium. Who knows? We have no idea. That could be coughing and have it. And then you're bringing it home there, and then it becomes a whole nother, debacle. That's the best word I could put it at. Fellas, anyone want to disagree with me on that?
I think mine is more just a question, Joe. I think my worry about that is, and listen, kudos, and I'm going to make Nick smile here again. I mean, kudos to MLS. I mean, they put their entire league there in Orlando and somehow are coming away with literally zero positive COVID-19 cases. I don't know how that's possible, but
well, listen. When you close off one little part of Disney World, Ian, it's not that difficult because
no, but like with the NBA and the NHL, the difference is you're not taking every single team down there with you. I'm not saying that they made the wrong decision by not dealing with this. Look, COVID-19 was a bomb that was dropped on all of us at the same time. So it's not as if Major League Baseball, the National Hockey League, the NBA, the NFL, they all knew about this months ahead of time and didn't inform us. You can't. I think it's a little more difficult unless you're talking about saying you're going to take the 5 California teams and put them all in San Francisco and put them all up in a hotel in San Francisco and you're all going to play at Oracle Park, or you're going to take all the teams from the National League and American League East and put them all at Camden Yards and say you're all going to play in Baltimore. I think with the NBA and the NHL, you're taking a select number of teams, the NHL putting X number of teams in Toronto, X number of teams in Edmonton, NBA confining basically only your playoff teams for the most part to Orlando. I just think it's going to be a lot more difficult to pull that off in Major League Baseball. There's just too many games. I know you have the stadium, you have the lights, but I foresee a lot more roadblocks with respect to Major League Baseball as I do to the other couple of organizations.
Yeah, it's fair. It's definitely fair. And Nick, I want to get back to you because I believe you have something else to go with there. It's so difficult because, there were talks, and when I was doing my homework for this show, I did not realize this, fellas, was that there was a talk of having 3 potential bubbles. Now, you would go to those cities that not only have, because really you can't play multiple games at a time on natural grass. You can't do it because you're going to need a grounds crew to clean everything up. And also, as Nick knows, as we know as Yankees fans, I know Ian is a Mets fan. But the Yankee Stadium hosts NYCFC on a normal day, and we know, Nick, we've seen it before when Nick and I have gone to a game as spectators and have seen the first base side or shallow right field. It is all it's all cut up, it's all dug up. Whatever it is, it's an absolute disaster. And I remember a few weeks ago. There you go. That's the way it feels. I believe it was about a year or 2 ago when Mark Teixeira was still with the Yankees, and NYCFC had just had become an MLS franchise. And I remember he had complained about the outfield grass, about the infield dirt. So why wouldn't you go and make 3 hub cities where you have turf on it? Go, and really I don't know if it's not that difficult, but yeah, okay, maybe to house everybody, it's expensive. Obviously, it all comes down to the money. But we're seeing the NHL do it. And not only that, too, we're seeing also the National Hockey League being able to have 3 games in one hub city per day. And as Tyler could probably attest to this because he builds ice rinks for a living, he knows that it's so difficult to keep ice at below 32 degrees when it's 110 degrees outside. So why couldn't Major League Baseball do it?
Well, you were talking about – I'm sorry, Nick. Go ahead.
I mean, my suggestion would have been to try and do 2 bubbles. Do one in New York and do one in California. That way you can bubble the players into one spot and then just have them go to any of the ballparks near there. If you do one in New York, you have 2 available ballparks you can use. You can have multiple games going on at once in each bubble. One bubble's all American League, one bubble's all National League, no interleague play this season. Make it so everybody plays only within their own league. They each have their own bubble, and then the World Series is at one of them at a time way down the road. But like I said, there was no planning that was well done on this because everything was on the financial side of the bargaining. Nobody, I feel like, was putting enough effort into thinking about how it was all going to work. The fact that this is the only league failing is the only league that's not in a bubble. It makes sense that the bubble, looking back on it, was the way they should have gone. And it just stinks that they couldn't pull something together because there are a lot of baseball fans who are going to miss out if this thing gets canceled in another week because the virus blows up within the players.
Right. And you know what? It's actually a perfect segue that Nick Partain just did there, because normally I would say let's keep it, topic to topic. But because I'm so unorganized, and Ian Schraier does not really know that, and if he read some of my recaps and articles at St. Francis, he'd know that it's an absolute disaster. I can't. My introduction is where my conclusion is. My conclusion is in the middle, and whatever. And Nick,
you wouldn't be writing for me, Joe. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. That's better off. I shouldn't do that. Stick to trying to talk and be on this podcast here. Let's look at the NFL, and we've heard also that there might not be a bubble city there either, because the owners and NFL and the National Football League do not want bubbles. So now we are seeing a domino effect of players opting out, and a lot of high-named people as well, guys. Who wants to start this? All right, Nick, go ahead.
I'll go. The problem with the NFL is you can't really bubble because all the teams play on the same days. You can't have teams playing on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You can't spread everything out. So a bubble in the NFL, you can't have every team in the league play on the same day or even 2 days. There's not enough time. So it would really muck up the way the season goes. So it'd be a lot harder to bubble the National Football League because, like you said, the National Football League tears up grass more than anyone else. So they're ground screwing would be the hardest to keep going with multiple teams playing in the same places on multiple days. So they almost have to make it work this way, which puts a massive onus on everyone to have their stuff together and make sure they're quarantining correctly and getting tested when they have to, and results coming in quickly, and everybody being prepared and safe and cautious, because teams have to kind of play in their own arenas in their own city to make the NFL work. But you're right. That's why a lot of high-profile guys are opting out. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to risk getting sick. They'd rather be home safe with their families. And I think that the NFL is going to have to accept that they're not going to get a full fleet of players, and they're going to have to put an incredible amount of work in to make this go safely and smoothly. And I have my doubts because it's going to be really hard without a bubble like we've seen with baseball.
I mean, I agree with Nick 100%. I mean, the team that's really suffering the most right now, go figure, is the New England Patriots. I mean, of all the teams in the NFL to have players opting out. I mean, I know Brady's in Tampa now along with Gronk, but I mean, Patrick Chung, Dante Hightower, Brandon Bolden, all three of them. I mean, 3 of 6 I just named.
Marcus Cannon. Yep.
Yeah, and there's another one. I mean, my thing with the NFL is, believe it or not, some franchises have still said we still plan on selling single game tickets in the hopes that we're going to have games in September. It's, I mean, listen, I have my own reservations about Jerry Jones, but I mean, there are teams who, I mean, kudos to New Jersey and Governor Murphy for getting it right and saying, if somehow these numbers change and we can put fans in the seats, we'll put fans in the seats. I mean, a giant season ticket holder right here, and I'm telling you, it's the best move possible for all parties concerned. I mean, I forewent my tickets for this year. It's too scary. They should be playing in closed stadiums. They make enough money off the TV rights. They make enough money off everything with regards to TV. Like, if you look at the percentage breakdown just in revenue alone for the NFL, 80% of it is TV. So where's the problem? You've got CBS covering the AFC. You've got Fox covering the NFC. You got Monday Night Football. You got Sunday Night Football. You've got Red Zone. You're the richest league in the country, and you're worried about not having fans and seats. I think there's bigger fish in the sea right now.
Yeah, and that to me would be not only keeping your players healthy, your money makers healthy. I mean, don't get me wrong. Right where I'm sitting, Nick knows is that I could sit down here and all day long and eat, be fat, and watch football. That's just what I do. Nick knows that. He's done that with me. It's bad because, exactly what you said, Ian, is that, and that goes with everybody all over the country. Again, I don't want to get political, but what it comes down to is that what are you thinking? Some of these owners or some of these ticket departments saying, okay, and they're listening to the top saying, well, we might be able to. No, you just stop. Just stop it. You're not going to be able to do it. And also, you have to realize too, where Ian, you also have a family yourself. You have a young girl. So, you have to be careful. Would you, and that's the whole thing. And you're a father. Would you risk going to a game and then, God forbid, bringing it home to her or to, or whoever it may be, elders, relatives, etc.?
I mean, it's my daughter, it's my wife, it's my family. It's a concern for everybody. You have to, with the NFL, it's been the perfect storm for them as compared to the other professional leagues in this country or in the world. their season ended in February. Okay, whether or not the virus was prevalent in December or January, we didn't get hit with it till March. Okay, so Super Bowl was over. Free agency happened. The draft is a made-for-television event. I mean, yeah, they've now turned it into basically a Hollywood event where they were going to have, be floating draft players that were drafted on boats on the fountains of the Bellagio in Las Vegas this April, which is mind blowing to me. But it's a made for television event, and it worked out perfectly for them. It worked out perfectly. So now you're hoping that a vaccine's going to come through or something's going to happen with COVID-19 to show that maybe we can get fans in the seats by September. And right now that doesn't look like the case, but we still have 2 more months to go. They canceled the preseason, so they don't have to worry about any fans for at least another month. So it's crazy to think, but I think that there is a real good possibility that certain teams are going to actually have fans in the stands.
Yeah, I digress. Let's move on to the next thing here, and let's go back. Actually, we're going to rewind similar to the way that The Last Dance would. We go back from 1998 all the way back to 1981 for a quick second. So let's do that here on the Primetime Rundown. Let's go back to Major League Baseball for a quick second and a little bit of positivity here. Fellas, the free agency we spoke about last week with Mookie Betts and how the money we thought at one point the wallets would grow dust. Well, guess what? Money was going crazy for Mookie Betts. And personally, I do believe that money is going to continue to flow in Major League Baseball when it comes to upcoming free agents. And I think now that Mookie Betts is off the market, I'll start this one actually, fellas, and who the biggest acquisition or free agent acquisition could potentially be, or the biggest free agent on the market. And some may not agree with me that are watching right now, but my personal best is going to be JT Realmuto. And I think that what he's done not only in 2019, what he's done in 2018 when he was with Miami, he's a Gold Glover. He's a 2-time Silver Slugger Award, 2-time All-Star Game participant. He led the National League in steals, 43 in caught steal in throws and throwing men out 43 times. His caught stealing rate was also the first in National League, 46.7. So not only his bat with a 275 batting average, 328 on base percentage, 493 slugging percentage, and an OPS of a ridiculous number of 820. So his inside the batter's box is great, but also we can't take away his defensive skills, an all-around good catcher that will most likely cost a lot of money for Philadelphia. And do they have it, or where does he go? Who wants to start this one off?
Sure, Joe. I'll start it off. I mean, I think for JT Realmuto, he is by far and away, besides Mookie Betts, the best free agent on the market coming into 2021. I'm biasly, I'm hoping he's a New York Met, with new ownership come 2021. I mean, there was a lot of talk last offseason about how the Mets were going to trade Syndergaard and a couple of other pieces for JT Realmuto, which at the time I was like, are you out of your mind? Now I would love to get rid of Syndergaard. Unfortunately, no one's going to take him. I mean, it's and I'm not trying to speak, I'm more trying to deliver the point that, I mean, Realmuto is you look at the free agent class and you got guys like Marcus Semien, DJ LeMahieu, George Springer. I mean, I'm a huge Springer fan. I mean, he's going to be 32. I mean, he's kind of starting to hit the edge of the prime now. I mean, there's no real candidate besides Betts or Realmuto that really falls in that big gap in terms of right in the thick of your prime that's going to get like a Harper, a Betts-like contract. So it's, I'm right there with you, Joey. I definitely think that the guy to look forward to is JT Realmuto because, I mean, you look at the money that Posey got, you look at the money now that Betts is getting. I mean, I think it's a little asinine to think that a catcher is going to get Mookie Betts-like money. But, I mean, I think it's still asinine that Mookie Betts got Mookie Betts-like money. But at the same time, I think he's going to be the best free agent on the market.
Yeah, and also don't forget, too, before we get to Nick, too, is that right now we are also seeing two guys, one of which is an upcoming free agent in Didi Gregorius, too, who has burst onto the scene in downtown Philly. But also don't forget, too, somebody that most likely not a lot of people have been speaking about thus far is Nick Castellanos, who really in Cincinnati, which we'll get to later on, he's bursted onto the scene as well. And he really was not brought in for to be a designated hitter. And that's really what he's come in to do now, because now right field, they now also have the new left fielder from Japan, Shiga Yamamoto or Shiga
Akiyama.
Shogo Akiyama. Oh
Yeah.
boy. Wow. That was poor. So and not only that, Nick Senzel as well in center field. There are a lot of components that Cincinnati has, and now with this universal designated hitter, and we might be seeing, Ian, your Mets may never go back to traditional baseball with the pitcher batting. So, and we've said this continuously, the Mets benefit from it big time. But now I think that Nick Castellanos, if he continues to go on the tear that he is now, he's an opt-out candidate. And could he get, again, if the green is really going, could he command more than, I think it's $10 or $15 million? I don't know, but we'll see. He's another one. Nick Partain, what are your thoughts on my spiel and your biggest acquisition now that Mookie Betts is off the market?
Well, we'll start with Castellanos. You mentioned that he can opt out. I think this is going to be a year. I spoke about this the last time we talked about baseball, that opt-outs I don't think are going to be a big thing. I think guys are going to take guaranteed money when they have it, because it's going to be a very uncertain offseason. We don't know for sure if teams are going to get into bidding wars, if they're going to spend money. It's going to be very hard to predict from the outside. A lot can happen between now and then. I feel like a lot of that might come down to how much revenue baseball makes this year, if they're able to recoup their losses as much as possible, or if this thing gets canceled. So with the names available, there aren't a ton of super duper stars out there that are looking for huge bankrolls. So maybe they will still get the money they're looking for. I'm going to go with the guy also on Cincinnati. How about Trevor Bauer, who got traded over there, but he hasn't gotten a new contract. He's shown ace potential when he was with Cleveland. He had a good start to this season after not being great for Cincinnati after the trade last year. If he shows that he's a true ace the rest of the season, if baseball is played, he could be a candidate to actually get a lot of money from Cincinnati or another team looking for a top-tier pitcher. With Real Muto, I'd be a little concerned. He's a 30-year-old catcher. That's not a great number to hear for a guy who spends that much time crouching. He's a complete catcher, though. He can hit. He plays defense. But it's a little scary to think of a team giving a ton of money to a catcher who's played this long, who's already at this age. And you don't want to move catchers to DH. That's not usually a great value for your team. So I feel like Bauer could be the one who ends up breaking the bank a little more based on his position.
Perfect example would be Nick's favorite, Brian McCann. That is a pretty good example, I'd say. How old was Brian McCann when Brian Cashman signed your boy there, Nick?
5 years, $85 million. I don't know. He was past 30 though.
I think he might have been 34. I'm not sure.
I mean, somewhere in that area, old enough that it was like, how are you giving an old catcher 5 years, $85 million when you have other holes? But whatever.
I mean, Joey, I want to jump back to what you were saying before about Didi Gregorius. I mean, if you want to talk about 2020 free agency, I mean, I still think Garrett Cole right now is the best free agent acquisition of the offseason because of the need that he absolutely filled. I mean, you can circle the market all you want. He filled the biggest need for the team that needed it most. But with respect to Gregorius, I mean, listen, I know because of his injury that he was kind of looked down upon, and the Phillies gave him a shot. And I mean, because the Yankees have so much depth, did they really need him? I mean, I'm sure the Yankees are missing him a little bit. But at the same time, I think with Didi it's a great start for him. I mean, Bryce has not gotten out to a great start their first few games. Real Muto hasn't gotten out to a great start. Hoskins is barely batting his weight. So, I mean, to have a guy like Didi Gregorius in another hitter's ballpark, it just really benefits him, and I'm happy for him about it.
And not only that, too, Ian, you brought up a great point about how, would the Yankees really need him? And to be completely honest with both of you guys, is that Didi Gregorius was a massive fan favorite. And I also do believe that with baseball not obviously having fans, with no fans being here, I think that, and it may sound a little cliche, but to not have the fans in the ballpark and Didi being Didi, and as a Yankees fan, Didi was the one to really get the fans hype and to get the fans out of their seats whenever, obviously, fans were packing the ballpark. Now it's a little different, obviously, because we have to adjust completely with no fans. There's nobody at Yankee Stadium. There's nobody on the road. And now I feel almost like, yeah, the Phillies are able to cash in on the leadership that Didi has brought following, obviously, Derek Jeter's retirement, because he was the one to supposedly be the next, the replacement. How can you replace a legend and a Hall of Famer? You can't really. And it's not because he didn't leave because he couldn't do that, because, boy, did he fill in those shoes. I'm not going to say to Derek Jeter's, to that mantle, no pun intended. But, to be able to get fans in the ballpark, to be able to do whatever, I think now we're seeing that he really was not needed, because the Yankees are still doing fantastic. We're seeing a full healthy squad where now Gleyber Torres is doing great. Obviously, he just had a knee contusion, I believe, yesterday or 2 days ago, one or the other. Again, I'm losing track of my days, but he's filling in nicely at shortstop. And I think now that the Phillies are cashing in with him, but I think Didi, at the end of the day, is going to be the one that might cash in on a team that is pretty close. And you know what, fellas? I think it might be Cincinnati. If Cincinnati continues to win, hey, listen, Freddie Galvis is a career utility man.
I'm not buying that Cincinnati hype, Joe. I'm really not. But when we get there, I'll tell you why.
That's fair. That's fair. Let's keep moving forward, fellas. And I like to talk about the Toronto Blue Jays. First off, not having a home, we already know that. But they also have the #1 prospect in all of baseball by a man named right-handed pitcher Nate Pearson. He had 5 innings pitched on his major league debut, 5 strikeouts, 2 hits against Washington. Really, really good performance. Ian Schraier, you first. Nate Pearson, is he someone that could potentially make his mark in Toronto?
I mean, look, I didn't get a chance to watch the Blue Jays game. I did get a chance to see the highlights of Pearson throwing. I mean, coming into the season, there was talk that he wasn't even going to see the field until August, maybe even September. I mean, it shows how the lack of depth right now in that Toronto rotation after Ryu. And remember, Ryu came over in the offseason. So it's, with Nate Pearson, I mean, he looked every bit. I mean, he's Toronto's #1 prospect, but he's the #10 prospect in all of baseball coming into the season, which is incredible. I mean, he was pointing corners at 99 against guys like Trey Turner. And obviously Trey Turner is no slouch. I mean, he pitched 5 innings. I believe it was 5 strikeouts or 6 strikeouts, 2 hits, 2 walks, 75 pitches. I mean, he was averaging 15 pitches an inning. In most cases at his age, he probably would have gone 7 innings in a full game if they weren't running him out there for his first major league start. He had incredible bite on his changeup. I mean, listen, and it came against the Nationals. The Nationals can hit. I mean, I know they're minus Juan Soto. I know they're struggling to hit right now with Castro and Kendrick in the middle of that lineup instead of Juan Soto and Anthony Rendon. But there's something to be said for your first major league start and being able to paint corners at 99 and have a changeup at 83 that bites the way it does like that. So really impressive, and he certainly looked all the bit of it yesterday.
Nick.
Yeah, you can see all the talent right away. This guy could very well, very quickly be the best pitcher Toronto has had since Roy Halladay. He showed everything you want in a starting pitcher. He's got the size, velocity, an off-speed pitch to go with it. He looked absolutely outstanding and in control. For a guy like Ian said, in a normal baseball season, this guy would have had almost a full minor league season to tune himself up before being a late season call-up. He had, one little bit of spring training to get under his belt before he got called up and immediately looked that good. That's very impressive for a top prospect. And yeah, I'm glad Ian said it because I was going to jump down Joey's throat. He is not the #1 prospect in all of baseball. Prospect for Tampa Bay that everyone's very excited to see. Pearson, I didn't really know as much about him, but I've been very excited to see Franco when he ends up coming up on Tampa. That's going to be fun to watch. But this kid Pearson looked like he clearly fit the pedigree of a top 10 prospect in all of baseball. He clearly fit the pedigree of a #1 starter. He was very, very impressive right off the bat.
Yeah, it's really him right now. And in terms of pitchers in the pipeline, it's him and Casey Mize once Detroit's ready to call him up. So the future's looking good.
Here, you know what, Nick? This is honestly what I think of you jumping down my throat. Okay, I'm not really not a fan of that. Okay, so now we saw Nate Pearson, and really, fellas, just one final thought here. It's sad when you look at what general manager and president of baseball operations Mark Shapiro did in Toronto when he rebuilt that starting rotation. He gave out a ton of money to a number 5 starter in Tanner Roark. He had Matt Shoemaker come back, and I can't even think of the number 4 starter out there. Hyunjin Ryu as well. I think he's 33, 34 years old, and I think he has a 4-year, 5-year deal. So he's going all the way until he's 39 or 40 years old. Listen, he had a fantastic first half of 2019, and then boy did he fall off a cliff. Honestly, as from the words of Dennis Bernstein, seriously fell off the cliff because he had, I think it was like an over 6 or 7 ERA, and now you're coming into the American League, number 1, and number 2 in the American League East. So, you figure that's, again, a lot of money and taking a big risk, especially with a team that is trying to go upward. It's so tough, and I think Nate Pearson, yeah, he fits in, but forget about Toronto the rest of the way. They're a mess. Vlad Guerrero can't figure out what position he's playing at first base. So speaking of not figuring out how to do anything right is Edwin Diaz, and Ian is a diehard Mets fan, and I've been following all of your tweets because God help the Mets, God help you, Ian, for loving your Mets. And not only that, I do apologize. Happy belated birthday, because I know I said it to you, but last week, and
thank you, by the way.
You had watched the Mets game. You were supposed to come on here. You had watched the Mets game with a friend of yours. But being able to watch the Mets sometimes might not be a positive, relaxing time for you.
Well, it's funny, actually. I mean, we were watching opening day together, and it's an annual tradition. And funny enough, it was almost not going to be an annual tradition anymore because I was actually supposed to miss opening day at Citi Field this year to work. So actually the tradition continues. But no, thank you so much. I appreciate it. But with regards to the Mets, I mean, they're winning 10-5 in Atlanta right now, which is with Porcello pitching and giving up 2 or 3 runs early is fascinating in itself right now. But I mean, this team right now should be 6-1. I mean, they're 3-4. I mean, they're winning right now. Hopefully, they'll be 4-4 and tied with Atlanta for the second best record in the division to the Miami Marlins, who are 2-1. Going back to what Nick was saying, it's all a ploy. But yeah. I mean, look, they started the year. I mean, if I remember the rankings, they were listed with a top 10 starting rotation. Obviously, that's including if Marcus Stroman was there as well. A dynamic offense, returning Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil was coming back, had a great last year where he was hitting, for the most part, 300 for the better part of the second half of the season until he changed his approach at the plate and started hitting more for power. But, I mean, they're actually 1-4 this year right now at Citi Field. Of their 3-4 record, they only have 1 win. It was opening day. They've lost 4 straight. I mean, if you want stats, here's a good stat for you. In their 5 games right now at Fenway Park, at Citi Field, 12 runs in 5 games. In 2 games at Fenway, 15 runs in 2 games. Now I know that the Fenway tends to give up more home runs, as a result of the dimensions of the stadium, but. I mean, this has happened before where this team has had numerous power outages at Citi Field. For some reason, they've hit better on the road than they do at home. I don't get it. Mets continue to move in the outfield wall, and they still can't hit. It's
exactly what I was going to say. Where are they going to move?
Yeah, I mean,
you see, every time I watch a Mets game, I'm like, wow, I remember when the wall was 20 feet back everywhere. It just
the Great Wall of Flushing. The Great Wall of Flushing. It was great. I mean, and to belabor the point about the offensive struggles, I mean, the Mets right now are hitting .217 with runners in scoring position. Now this is not counting the game that's going on in Atlanta right now. .217 with runners in scoring position, 181 with a runner on third and 2 outs, and 107 with runners in scoring position and 2 outs. And with a lineup that has as much invested in it, now granted, Cespedes took a huge pay cut. I mean, I think he's making a quarter of what he would have normally been making had he been healthy. I mean, the Cano-Diaz trade is looking every day more like a mess. I mean, Alonso's finally starting to get going. Rosario's starting to play well. J.D. Davis is doing his thing. But, it's more the hitting right now than it is the bullpen. I understand what your point, Joe. And yes, Edwin Diaz is a disaster. And he jumped in front of the press today and says, I feel like I have the stuff to be there. I mean, listen, this is a guy who 2 years ago had 50-plus saves for the Seattle Mariners. I mean, the second most in Major League history. I mean, there's got to be something to be said for that. But, has he probably played his way out of the closer role? We'll see. I think so, but we'll see. But I think the hitting right now, I mean, the hitting should have won them the last 2 games at Citi Field against the Red Sox. I know on Wednesday, Justin Wilson came in his fourth pitching day in 6 days and served up a couple of runs, and that turned out to be the deciding factor. But you need guys like Conforto, Cespedes, Cano to be hitting for you in big spots. The Mets had a chance to win the game Wednesday with the bases loaded and nobody out and scored 1 run. Yesterday they had the bases loaded and 1 out in the 8th, down a run. Couldn't drive them in. So we can blame the bullpen all we want. I mean, Betances has looked great so far. Familia's looking more and more like his 2015 form, which is fantastic for the Mets. Lugo's about as locked down as they come right now for that team. I don't see. I mean, Diaz is the only problem. Granted, he's a big problem, but right now it's not the bullpen. I mean, the fact that Diaz had such a horrible 2019 is just adding fuel to the fire. I mean, you have to pay attention to the fact that this team right now is just not, I mean, they scored 10 runs tonight, but this team before tonight was not hitting. And they're not hitting at home, and right now they're on the road.
It's so tough because just a few years ago, we spoke about Justin Wilson when he was the number 1 reliever on the market from Detroit. He would then be shipped off to Chicago to the Cubbies. But then I remember just a few weeks ago, Nick had told me that I was absolutely bonkos. And why? Because I had said that this Mets team, and I was very, very high on this Mets team. And I honestly thought that this team could really make a run when healthy. On paper, this team, even without Noah Syndergaard, can really go to the World Series, in my opinion. I really thought it could be. And I know that, yes, a lot of people now that are watching are rolling their eyes saying, Joe, get the hell off this show. But in all seriousness, though, I really did believe if we could see Edwin Diaz perform like how he did 2 years ago, if we could see, and you know what? I don't even care about Robbie Cano. Forget about him. We could see Ahmed Rosario do a little bit better. J.D. Davis do really well, lock down left field. How about Brandon Nimmo, Michael Conforto, who's really right now not looking too hot. Marcus Stroman, though, unfortunately going down, Long Island boy.
Well, you got to remember something, Joe. J.D. Davis is not a left fielder by trade. J.D. Davis is a third baseman who basically, I mean, they're basically giving him, I don't know if you remember, I'm trying to remember what season it was. Maybe it was 2013 or 2012, where they were trying Lucas Duda out in right field. Lucas Duda was not an outfielder. J.D. Davis is not an outfielder. I mean, did you see a couple, I mean, I don't know if you guys watched the game on last Sunday night. Did you see a couple of the routes J.D. took? I mean, a huge run last night was scored because a little lazy fly ball because J.D. Davis was playing basically no doubles, couldn't even come in and catch a routine pop-up. Right now the Mets are still rolling out guys that shouldn't be playing their positions. Right now, J.D. Davis should be the designated hitter. J.D. Davis should be, like I said, should be the DH. Cespedes should be sitting on the bench or playing left field. I know, like right now, he doesn't have all his speed back, but it's still a whole lot better than putting J.D. Davis in left field. Nimmo is a center fielder by trade. I mean, I worked in Brooklyn with the Cyclones when Nimmo came up with the team in center field. He was a fantastic center fielder. I mean, does he cover as much ground as maybe like a Juan Lagares or a Ryan Cordell or a Jake Marisnick who's now on the DL can? No, probably not. But they do this thing where they, like someone said to me the other day and said, oh, I love this lineup yesterday. Really? You love the lineup? Dom Smith is in left field. Dom Smith was touted as the Mets' best first baseman in the minors before Pete Alonso came in. Yeah. So it's J.D. Davis, believe it or not, though, Joey, I mean, had, I think, oh my God, the 7th best, I think, OPS in the majors at the end of this last season. I mean, Davis is doing fine with the bat. Rosario's really starting to find his swing. I mean, the big guy who's been the disappointment so far has been, even though he had a good first couple of games, has been Michael Conforto. Conforto's come up in 2 huge spots the last 2 nights and has not even delivered a sac fly. I mean, he's got a great eye at the plate, don't get me wrong, but I mean, you were touted as one of the top prospects in the system. You came up in 2015 during the World Series run, and now you're batting fourth, fifth. You're not batting fourth, fifth to be batting 240. You're up there to be driving in runs, and right now he's not doing that.
Nick, your thoughts before we move on.
So the Mets legitimately are probably the worst defensive team in baseball. It's like every position that they play is a guy who's below average for that spot. I mean, your arguments are for Nimmo is probably an average center fielder. Maybe Conforto's an average right fielder. And it depends on what version of Rosario you get. We've seen him as a terrible shortstop. He was touted, though, as a top prospect defensively there. So all those things. And Ian, I'm sorry, I have to comment on a few things that are really gripping me. Remember when Michael Conforto was better than Aaron Judge? Remember when all the Mets fans were talking all that smack about how great he was? It was so funny to watch that play out where Conforto's a good player, but he's not Aaron Judge. And then we go through the
At least not right now. At least not right now.
Absolutely. When healthy, both of them, it's not a contest. Judge is a much better player. Then we have the same thing go on last year with Pete Alonso and all these Mets fans making fun of Judge for being hurt, and Alonso breaks the home run record and whatnot. How satisfying was it for a Yankee fan watching last night? Pete Alonso strikes out to end the Mets game with a runner on and a chance to tie it, and Aaron Judge to 3-run bomb in the 8th inning to bring the Yankees back after an epic collapse. That just felt so good after hearing all the nonsense I've heard after the past while. You keep getting hated on Judge by everyone else because he's a Yankee. And I get that people hate the Yankees and Yankee fans. I really do. But it was still satisfying to see everything play out that way. But Ian's very right about the Mets. They could very well be 6-1 right now. They've had a couple of weird things happen to them. I mean, they almost got out of a really tough jam the other day where I forget who it was. A left-handed hitter hit like a little cue shot down third to give them the lead with the bases loaded. They almost got out of that one. They've had all the opportunities to get one sac fly to tie the game or one big hit wins it for them at the end, and they've just missed. They've gotten unlucky a little bit, but the defense has been a major problem. Jeff McNeil, no matter where they play him lately, is having trouble with the glove, and he's the kind of guy who usually is reliable, at least where you play him. The big guys aren't hitting as well as they have to. At least Matz has been pitching well. That's a good thing to see because he's a wild card of whether he's healthy or whether he's pitching great or he's not pitching great. So he's been able to step up because they need him to be a number 2 pretty much right now with the injuries they have. DeGrom is DeGrom. He's probably the best pitcher in baseball. It's either him or Cole. It's splitting hairs. We know how that goes. But they're a mediocre team right now, and that kind of fits what they were pegged to be, but they could be better. And there are things they have to clean up that could get them to a competitive state.
I mean, I agree with Nick 100%. I think with respect to the Mets, it's and Joe, going back to your point about saying like you thought they could be a World Series contender, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, look, there's a loaded National League Central that we'll touch base on in a few minutes here, but and obviously there's this team called LA Dodgers who aren't half bad. It's they just don't perform in October. It's with respect to the Mets, it's with 8 teams making the playoffs, I don't see how this team doesn't at some point find their swing, find that hot spot like they did last year, the second half of the year, and rip off a nice little winning streak. I think it's going to happen at some point. When? I don't know. It depends how long it's really going to take some of these guys to find their swing. I mean, when is Cespedes going to get sit on the bench? I mean, Dom Smith should be getting at bats right now. I mean, Dom Smith is a whole lot better of an option than Yoenis Cespedes is right now. Yeah, 2 nights ago he hit a home run to make it a 6-4 game. That's great. I mean, I need him to come up with the bases loaded and hit a gapper into left center field. It's not in his swing right now. And I know he's on the last year of his contract, but I don't see a reason why this team shouldn't be in an 18 playoff in the National League and an 18 playoff in the American League, why they shouldn't at least be the second best team in the division to the Braves or a wild card. And I mean, Nick can agree or to disagree with me, but I don't see how they're not the second best team in the division right now as compared to the Phillies, the Marlins, and the Nationals.
I think the Nationals might be a better team, but it's not that big a disparity. They should at least compete for that second spot, and I think they should be at least expected to be close to a playoff spot, if not a lock for a playoff team. But I feel like the Nationals pitching is still better. When you have Scherzer and Strasburg, where the Mets just have DeGrom, I feel like that's a major X factor when you're comparing the two teams. And let's face it, the Mets have a way of letting everybody down when push comes to shove, and the Nationals finally got that monkey off their back last year. So, but we'll see how it plays out. Marcus Stroman, I feel like, is an X factor also for the Mets. If he comes back earlier than expected or at any point and can be Marcus Stroman, that's another huge arm for their rotation where they don't have a lot of depth right now.
Yeah, being a Met fan, a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, I'm a Met fan, so I get it. I really do.
You spoke about, Ian, just earlier with the NL Central. Let's get into the next topic and final or actually it's going to be the second to last topic in baseball because we still got MLS, we still got the NFL a little bit. to chat about. So we look at the Cincinnati Reds, and this is something that I've wanted to speak about for a little bit because the Cincinnati Reds, truthfully, again, in my opinion, this is a team, and I'm not saying that they're a World Series team, but they can make some noise, especially in an 8-team playoff round for both the National League and the American League. I don't know, fellas. I got to say, you got to tell me 8, 7, I don't think 6, but they get there. They got to get there. Anyone want to agree or disagree?
I don't really love Cincinnati. I think they've been mediocre so far. They're in a tough division. There's a lot of competitive teams there. I mean, maybe they compete for one of those bottom playoff spots, but if I'm a betting man, I'm not putting money on Cincinnati. I don't think they have enough depth in the pitching staff behind Bauer. Their lineup is a lot of unproven guys. Joey Votto's getting older. I don't know for sure what they are all around, and I just don't think there's enough there to trust. I think I'd actually put the Mets ahead of them as a threat in the National League.
Sonny Gray, Luis Castillo. Really?
Yeah, I don't know. They're unproven.
It's Sonny Gray. I mean, good for him, man. I think he's, through his first 2 starts. I mean, you can't dispute what he's done in his first 2 starts. I mean, guy 2-0, ERA under 2. I mean, I think this is the pitcher that the Yankees were hoping they would get it when they got him at the trade deadline from Oakland. The thing with the Reds right now is 6 of their first 9, technically 10 if you count the postponed game against the Cubs due to rain the other day, are against the Tigers. I mean, the Tigers are 4-3, which is unreal in my opinion to begin with. But 6 of their first 10 games are against the Tigers. After that, 33 of their final 50 are against teams that made the playoffs last year. I mean, if you're 2-4 right now and you can't beat Detroit, I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Miggy Cabrera anymore, but like Nico Goodrum, it's not a team that should be anywhere in the discussion for the postseason. I mean, even MLB Network, the night that they released the schedule, basically dismissed them without even going over them. So, for me, with the Reds, I'm gonna kind of repeat Nick's points. I mean, Joey Votto's getting older. I mean, he's going to turn 37 this September. He's still a fantastic glove. Right now, Eugenio Suarez is not performing at all. I mean, the guy had, 40 home runs, 100 RBIs last season, an MVP-like caliber season, and the guy is right now 2 first 21. I mean, when I heard about the Castellanos-Moustakas acquisitions, I mean, I loved the Moustakas acquisition. I really would have loved for him to be a Met. The guy is a regular, close to 30, 100 guy. For some reason, I don't understand why he really gets doubted the way he does. I think he's probably one of the most underrated players in baseball. Maybe not defensively, but with the bat especially. I mean, with what he did in Milwaukee and what he did for the Royals and helping them win the World Series. Right now they're combined, the 2 of them are combined 419. But after them, I mean, they just got Nick Senzel back, which is going to help. But no depth in the rotation. I'll even throw Sonny Gray in there. I mean, Sonny Gray, Trevor Bauer. I got to see more out of Luis Castillo. I mean, Wade Miley, I mean, is your 5th starter. I mean, he's a guy who's a bit of a trailblazer. I mean, he's been around the block, but and right now their bullpen is struggling. I mean, that was supposed to be a strength for them coming into the year with Iglesias and Lorenzen, and right now they're not performing. I mean, they've given up a run in every game they've played, I think, their bullpen. So they play in such a loaded division, Joe. They haven't won the division since 2012. I mean, back then you had Votto in his prime, Bruce, Frazier, Brandon Phillips. You had guys like that. And I just don't see how they contend with the Cubs, the Brewers. Everybody always doubts the Cardinals. Somehow the Cardinals always get into the playoffs. They're just that kind of team, the team that it's kind of like, I don't want to compare them to the Yankees, but you just kind of expect the Cardinals to be in the playoffs every year. So go ahead, Joe. I mean, to me, they're still the 4th best team in their division, after in front of Pittsburgh. I just think with the fact that after Bauer and Gray, 33 of your final 50 games, Brewers, Cubs, Twins. I mean, you're playing a couple of decent AL Central teams too. So I don't see how they don't have a hard time the rest of the way. If they make the playoffs, I mean, right now I think the San Diego Padres are a pretty hot team to talk about to be a 2nd best team in their division or a wild card team before we're starting to talk about the Reds. Because right now, I mean, they didn't get out to a hot start against one of the worst teams in baseball, and it doesn't get any easier from here.
Quick hit for both of you guys. Do they make the playoffs, yes or no, the Cincinnati Reds?
I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I'm going to agree no.
Okay, let's keep it moving forward here, fellas. We will get to the new kudos part of our show later on. We know who that's all about, so we'll get to the kudos part later, as we said. So New York Jets make a trade. We spoke about this a little bit last week, but not much. So, quote, my plan is to retire here. Jamal Adams had said that to, I believe, or he tweeted that, or NFL Network, one or the other. Jamal Adams was traded to Seattle. There was no extension, along with a 4th-round draft pick. And the Jets got back in return Bradley McDougald, a 2021, 2022 first-round pick, and a 2021 3rd-round pick. I want to start with Ian here because he's a Giants fan, and I need to hear a little bit of no bias here.
Well, I don't know how much bias you're going to get. I also work stats for the Jets, so I'm actually.
Oh, that's true. All right. Well, then who knows? Jamal Adams and this trade, he becomes this becomes the 4th trade to feature 2 first-rounders in the last 10 years. He joins Laramie Tunsil, Jalen Ramsey, and Khalil Mack. Ian Schraier, your thoughts on from what we've been hearing, where it is a lopsided trade?
There's no doubt it's a lopsided trade, but at what cost? It's great for Joe Douglas, Adam Gase, and the Jets front office. The return that they got is incredible. But, I mean, you're also getting a top 5, if not the best strong safety in the NFL. The Seahawks, in theory, are getting the best strong safety they've had since Cam Chancellor. A guy who can come up and blitz the quarterbacks, athletic as could be, can go out there, make the play, can cover. I mean, guy was a top 5 draft pick for a reason. I mean, I'm not saying that all top 5 draft picks work out because we certainly know they don't. But in Jamal Adams' case, I mean, the guy's a stud. I mean, he's the core of that defensive backfield, the core of that defense. I wouldn't even throw, even when he was there, Leonard Williams or anybody like that in that discussion. I mean, he's really the guy that kind of followed David Harris in respect to Jets defensive captains, guys who really make the call on the field. But at what cost did you get him? I mean, I'm going to kind of quote Evan Roberts here from The Fan. I mean, he says, did we trade a proven commodity for lottery tickets? And it's a really good point. I mean, listen, the Seahawks are going to be a contending team in the NFC West. You know that. Unless barring a season where Russell Wilson goes down with some egregious injury, this team, the Jets' first-round draft picks are going to be late first-round draft picks. I mean, I'm not saying that affects the kind of player they can get, but, I would feel a lot better maybe if he was getting traded to the Jaguars or if he was getting traded to the Browns and I had a chance to squeeze out a number 1 or a number 2 overall pick. But you could see the writing was on the wall. I mean, there was clearly, despite what was said in the newspapers, despite what was said on TV, there was a tense relationship between him and Gase. I mean, my biggest issue with Adam Gase is they gave. I mean, Joe Douglas wasn't there yet, and the Johnsons basically gave him the key to the Corvette. That's been my biggest issue with the Jets is that Adam Gase, who the reason they hired him was because he was Peyton Manning's quarterback coach in Denver. I don't think Peyton Manning needs a quarterback coach. I'm just being honest here. I mean, the guy didn't win in Miami. And now he's coming into a Jets organization that's basically giving him the keys to the car and said, go for it. I mean, he doesn't even want Le'Veon Bell on this team. And now you've just made your all-pro strong safety miserable. So now he's in Seattle. You got a haulback for it. But, I don't think anybody expected the Jets to be a winning team in 2020. I still think that they're, at least now with Adams gone, at least 2-3 years away. I mean, they dressed the offensive line, which was a huge piece that they needed to in the draft. I mean, Becton's a big question mark because he was labeled as a project. I mean, the guy's a monster, but he was labeled as a project. Pass rush still leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, Henry Anderson was by far and away their best pass rusher last season, and he's an interior lineman. And then lastly, I mean, there's people on NFL Network talking about how they're going to tank in 2020 to get Trevor Lawrence. I don't think this team has lost any faith in Sam Darnold. I mean, I know I'm kind of getting off the path here, but just to kind of belabor the point with respect to Jamal Adams, like this team is not trying to tank by trading Jamal Adams. Like their future is Sam Darnold. And once they finally get an offensive line around him, let's see what the Jets actually have. But in the meantime, I mean, losing Jamal Adams is huge. But at what cost did you give him up?
I personally believe one quick thing before Nick gets here is that, I don't know, I thought, truthfully, that it was not only a lopsided trade where the Jets won that deal. We don't know yet until we see Joe Douglas makes those, until Joe Douglas makes those picks in 21 and 22. I think from the background that he has, he is a fantastic general manager, so I believe that he'll be able to draft way better than what we've seen in the past from the Jets.
Well, what are you going off of, Joe, by saying he's a good general manager that's going to draft well?
Because he came from the Eagles. That's why.
He learned from one of the best. That's that. Number two, also, is that you also have seen Jamal Adams. Yes, he is a game changer. What else has he done other than be a game changer on the defensive side? There's a lot of problems in Jets world. There's a lot of problems still there. Jamal Adams, it was better to ship him out so you can get a plethora of picks. You're able to get someone that is, I don't want to say decent, but below average, Nick. I don't know if that's the best phrase to say for Bradley McDougald.
Again, well, Jordan, you're trading him for the picks.
Yeah, no, you are. And McDougald was just thrown in there. Can he hold his own now? Yeah, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, again, the picks, that is the was
the center of the trade.
Yeah, that was the center point of the trade. I don't know. I just think that it's a win for both. We'll see also if there's an extension that would be signed. How much is he going to cost as well? And also, again, with a financial fallout, we don't know what's going to happen now with the NFL. We might see a flat cap similar to the NHL, as what DB was saying earlier. And Ian, you hit the nail on the head when you said Jamal Adams they have not had one of the all-around players or all-around safeties that has been that good since Cam Chancellor. You look at what he's been doing around the box, Jamal Adams, that is, and we have not seen something like that in Seattle since the days of Cam Chancellor. Obviously, we saw here Marcus May. He was the deep center fielder almost. Jamal Adams would play in there. That's also why he would have 6.5 sacks as well, 75 total tackles. And he could also be used as a pass rusher too. And I believe that Seattle defense has gotten so much better with him here. But the Jets, though, I think, I don't know, what'd you say, 2 to 3 years away from winning or 2 to 3 years from contending?
I would say 2 to 3 years from even maybe contending. I mean, listen, a lot is built, Joe, and I'm eager to hear Nick's points too. And once we get there, I mean, I think for the Jets, I mean, you hope that this offensive line pans out next. I mean, they're going to have to pay Sam. I mean, Sam's got 2 more years left on his rookie deal. If Sam works out, great. I mean, my point of saying they're 2 to 3 years away is contingent on the fact that Darnold is going to be the quarterback of the future. If I'm wrong and Adam Gase comes out at a press conference at the end of 2020 and says Trevor Lawrence is our guy, well, then we're going to have to really adjust that assessment. But I think right now, I think they have their staple in a quarterback. The next step they have to do is just address that defense, and then they can start building with luxury players around. Like, I didn't understand the Frank Gore move. I didn't understand why they were looking at drafting wide receivers. They need offensive line help. They need defensive line help. You build in the NFL, you build the foundation of your team, and then you spread out the luxury players around them. I'll be the first to say 2 years ago right now, Saquon Barkley is the wrong pick. Saquon Barkley was the wrong pick for the Giants at that time. They didn't have any offensive line, no pass rush, and they took a running back. So for me, it's the Jets needed to address like when I saw that they drafted a running back and a wide receiver in the 3rd and 4th rounds. I'm like, what are you trying to address here? Do you realize how bad your pass rush was last year? And it's been for a while. I mean, Quinnen Williams did not have the year that they expected to as a rookie. I mean, it was his first year. I expect a little more this year. But there's major questions with the Jets defense, and they need to address it ASAP.
Nick.
All right. So had a lot of time to sit there and listen to you guys. There were a lot of great points made. So I'm going to come right off the bat and talk about, Joey mentioned the other 3 trades that were for 2 first-round picks. He said Laramie Tunsil, Jalen Ramsey, and Khalil Mack. The difference between Jamal Adams and those 3 guys is the other 3 all play premium positions in the NFL. Pass rusher, corner, left tackle are premium positions. Safety is not that. So for the Jets to get that kind of haul, which is actually more than 2 first-round picks, they got a replacement safety who's probably a mediocre starter, maybe like a 20th best starting safety in the league, but that's still better than what you're going to replace them with from interiorly. Then you get a 3rd-round pick for a 4th-round pick swap that's also moving up a year. You get the 3rd this upcoming year instead of a 4th in a year. So they got a ton. This is probably the most the team has gotten in a trade for a single player probably ever. And it's a guy who plays a non-premium position. The Jets already have Marcus May at safety, who's a great safety in his own right. Doesn't get enough attention. He's a great center fielder out there when he's healthy. So if McDougal can be decent, it's still going to have a good safety tandem for your team. Ian made a lot of great points that they need to hit on some of the premium positions in their own right. Becton has to pan out as a left tackle. They need to go out and find a pass rusher. They need to go out and find corners that are elite. They have to be able to fill those positions. But everything comes down to Sam Darnold. And that's why you drafted a wide receiver, Denzel Mims, to fix a depleted wide receiver corps. You need Darnold to succeed, or you're going to get your timeline pushed back another 3 or 4 years because you're going to have to get a new quarterback in there. This year might be Darnold's last chance. Joe Douglas didn't draft him. So they may say they have a ton of faith in him, but I think this is his last shot. If he doesn't play well this year, I think they're going to look to move on. They have 2 first-round picks each of the next 2 drafts. So if they don't bottom out, they have the ammunition to trade up for a guy. I think that's how it's going to work out. But hopefully Sam Darnold pans out. If Sam Darnold has a good year this year, they have a chance to be at least semi-mediocre. I think the defense is rough talent-wise, but Greg Williams did a great job last year. They were a good defense with not a lot of big names. It was basically Jamal Adams, Marcus May, and a lot of who knows playing around there after Mosley got hurt. So we don't know exactly how their defense is going to be. They don't have a ton of talent, but Williams did a good job. If he can do a good job again this year and have a decent defense, and Darnold actually takes that step forward and becomes a good starting quarterback, they might be able to sniff around the last seed in the AFC. It's very optimistic, but there's a chance. But that's really what it's going to come down to is, can Darnold take the next step? But they really do need help at some of the key positions. If the line plays well, Darnold plays well, they need Mims to take a step, and then you can use those first-round picks on bolstering the big-time positions. They need really a number 1 wide receiver needs to be drafted. They need pass rush help. That needs to be drafted. They need a number 1 corner. They have a couple of guys that overachieved last year, but we don't know what we're going to get out of them going forward. They need that. Those are all premium positions that those first-round picks need to be addressed with. They have their own first. They have Seattle's first. If they don't have to trade up for a quarterback, they can sit there and say, we need to hit on big-time positions and fill in big-time positions. And then you're right. In 2 years, they could be a very good team if they hit on some draft picks going forward and Darnold takes the next step. But it's the Jets. We're really throwing a lottery ticket out there because a lot has to go right for it to work out. And now we've seen the Jets' best player, Jamal Adams, gets traded, but he took shots at Adam Gase. And if you ask any Jets fan, we're all very lukewarm at best on Adam Gase. We have not seen enough from him. His offense hasn't been good. His development of Darnold hasn't looked very good. Darnold had a good run down the stretch last year, but it was against a lot of mediocre teams, so I don't know how much faith we can put into that. So there's a lot going forward that we don't know what's going to happen. It's a lot up in the air, but it really does all come down to Sam Darnold. And this trade should be looked at as a success. And you guys mentioned a flat cap could be coming up. Avoiding paying Jamal Adams and having first-round picks, which are gold when you don't have salary cap space, could end up being a big, big part of this trade. You're getting the value of the picks plus the value of not having to pay a safety a ton of money. Now you can give some of that money to May, who's probably going to need a contract for the next year. They were drafted the same year, those two. But May, not being as big a name, isn't able to ask for the contract now. But it's going to go forward as a good trade. Even if the picks don't work out, you can't pass that up. They got an unbelievable haul, maybe the biggest haul of all time for a guy that plays the non-premium position. Joe Douglas has to be patted on the back for at least being able to get what he did for a guy who literally had 1 foot out the door. He was gone. There was no way he was going to report this year or play or do anything positive for this team.
Well, you have to remember, you hope Sam Darnold's not seeing ghosts in the end zone this year, right?
Yeah, well, that coach will do a little better job. When Sam Darnold says that, you can't blame it all on Sam Darnold. The guy calling the plays that you hired to be your head coach, that you put all this faith in, needs to do a better job of drawing up schemes so that he's not seeing ghosts. Wow. Like, I would understand if the Patriots defense was just great and beat him, but the fact that he couldn't read anything proves that Gase's plan wasn't very good in the first place.
100%.
So, fellas, let's keep it moving forward here as all of a sudden time has crept up on us. I want to leave it to the two of you here, but I do want to just throw in this one little thing here. And, you know, before we get to MLS, I do want to just show this because this is something that all of our viewers should be getting. Nick Partain, I think you should be looking here.
Yay! Sorry, something crazy happened. I can't wait to talk about MLS.
So let's start off with NYCFC and let's conclude the show with NYCFC because the two of you are fans of New York City's team. Let's hear it, fellas. Go ahead.
I think I mentioned at the end of our podcast last week when we touched on NYCFC that I had no confidence in them whatsoever of beating Toronto. Toronto has had their number in the playoffs in every big moment, and they've blown us out. And for whatever reason, NYC has been one of the best teams in MLS since they've come in, and they've never been able to really get their footing against Toronto, even though they've beaten everybody else. I've literally told one of my friends going into that game that it was the first time ever as an NYCFC fan I had no confidence of them winning. And what did they do? They went out and played their best game of this season in this tournament, and they beat Toronto 3-1 in a game where they hadn't scored 3 goals all season together combined, and pulled 3 goals out against one of the best teams in the tournament. Came out with a win, showed the best of what they can be. It was really incredible to watch everything finally come together. They're arguably the second most talented team in MLS. The fact that they hadn't been scoring, they hadn't been winning was really disappointing. Finally, everything came together. They looked great. Castellanos played a great game as the center forward. He was leading the tournament in shots coming into that game. Finally gets a goal on a beautiful one-on-one move. Maxi Morales, they were only able to get 50 minutes out of because of an injury. He ends up with a beautiful assist and a beautiful goal. He's a little genius out there. It's incredible. I was very happy to see them actually come up and play a big game after laying a lot of eggs so far this year. So now they get to play Portland tomorrow night. My day gets even better. I'm going to probably miss the 10:30 hockey game because I have to watch a 10:30 soccer game, but I'm not complaining. But they really should be able to beat Portland. And I know you told me to talk about NYCFC, but I just checked my phone and the TV. Orlando City just beat LAFC, which is an unbelievable upset. Yeah, Orlando City scored in the 90th minute to beat LAFC, who is pound for pound the best team in MLS talent-wise. They're ridiculous. Even without Carlos Vela playing in this tournament, they were blowing teams out. Diego Rossi was playing like an MVP. They scored more goals than anyone else by a long shot. They were dominating teams, and they just lost to Orlando, who's like a perennially mediocre team who's never able to put it together. The fact that Orlando just beat LAFC is ridiculous, and it kind of puts another cast of doubt on LAFC being so talented but never being able to get it done in big games. And yeah, there's the updated bracket. It's ridiculous that they just lost. They beat Seattle, who beat them in the Western Conference Finals last year, who's also one of the best teams in MLS, and then lose to Orlando? That's horrible. I can't believe they just dumped that game. And now you could sincerely make the argument that NYCFC is the most talented team left in this tournament and could actually be a favorite going forward because they're talented enough to win all these games if they put it together, but we have to see how they're able to play. But I'm much more confident in the City now than I have been at any point this season because they finally showed me what they should have been playing like the whole time.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say one quick thing. We have, according to Blackjack Media Group, I have just received word we have been granted an extra 10 minutes because we have been doing very well. And also we want to make sure that Ian and Nick and myself, we all get to exactly what we have to do. So thank you very much, Bobby, for granting us the extra 10 minutes because I-95 Sports Network on Zingo TV, there will be the programming will be pushed back. So we cannot thank him enough for that. So 10:10 is the time that we will be heading off, or potentially earlier. That will be the final buzzer, if you will. So Ian, continue with NYCFC or your.
Yeah, I'm wondering who exactly had 2 Group A teams in the semifinals and 3 Group A teams in the quarters. I mean, on Twitter when they released the groups, I said for NYCFC, I said could they have gotten a better draw? I mean, you had 2. Neophyte teams who have never seen a game, playing in that group, along with Philly, who was a real young team not a lot of people knew about, and Orlando, who actually really has had FC's number the last few years. For some reason, when NYCFC has to play down there in Orlando, they always lay an egg. Why? I have no idea. They just, for some reason, cannot play Orlando well, but it feels great to get over the hump against Toronto. It's a team, like Nick said, has had their number since they came into the league 5 years ago. I mean, the last year's heartbreaker in stoppage time, the PK when Matarrita took that horrible foul in the box, and I know Nick's closing his eyes just rewatching it. And then I was, in 2016, I was there when they lost that 5-0 game in the aggregate, at Yankee Stadium that a friend of mine and we left early. I'm like, I can't watch this anymore. I can't watch Andrea Pirlo sit there and drive shots 30 yards wide anymore. It just became so painful. But listen, that match on the other night, last week, could have finished 4-1. It could have finished 5-1. That's how really good NYCFC played. I mean, I said it myself. It's the best 90 minutes that they've played, 90-plus minutes that they've played all year, all tournament. And what really helped was the fact that they finally moved from a 4-3-3 to a 4-2-3-1. And because you put Castellanos up there as a striker and let him do his thing, now you could see what he's capable. Now you could see exactly what he's capable of. It's not so much, you got Medina running on the left flank and Tajiri Schraier on the right flank, and you're trying to get Castellanos the ball. Now he's up there to be the center forward, and he's up there to score. I mean, he's kind of, I'm not going to put him on the same level as him, but it's kind of the same level that David Villa was when he was with NYCFC. Just leave him up there and let him do his thing, and it's amazing what happens. He scores a goal. But, Tajiri Schraier went down after Medina scored that first goal because Toronto couldn't clear. Morales came in coming off an injury and looked fantastic. He even had a beautiful goal in the second half in the 81st. On top of that, I mean, Ibarra was on the bench and came in and nearly scored a chippy at the end of the game, on a chip at the end of the game. I mean, this team really showed what they're capable of. I mean, I don't know if I feel as confident as Nick at going to the Portland game tomorrow night, but that's where I will be at 10:30. I mean, I'll be watching the Rangers at 12, the Islanders at 4, the Mets at 7, and the NYCFC at 10:30. So it's a great schedule for tomorrow. But for NYCFC, this is a team, Portland, that they have not had a lot of good luck against in the past. They're 1-4 in their 5 career meetings against the Timbers. They are the Timbers are a team that's been there before. They've won it all. You just can't go against experience there. I mean, listen, I'm hoping NYCFC comes out with the win. They're the hot team right now. They're the more well-rested team for the second week in a row. They're going to get almost a full week, while Portland, I think, is only getting 3 days. So we'll see. I mean, NYCFC really shouldn't come out flat. But, I mean, even last year, I mean, Portland had one of its worst years, I would say most mediocre years to date, and still beat NYCFC at Yankee Stadium 1-0. So, I wish I could be as confident, but I'm excited that they're just there. I mean, considering how they played in the group stage, and I expected them to get absolutely romped by Toronto and won 3-1. It could have been 5-1. It could have even been 6-1. They just came out. They played great, and I'm just hoping for the best tomorrow night.
That's pretty good. There's a lot of good stuff to talk about with MLS soccer because you know what? This is obviously you two are all about MLS, and that's pretty cool. I got to ask you this, Ian. Are you as much of a Red Bull hater as Nick Partain is?
Oh, the Red Cows? Yeah. It's I've been to my fair share of Hudson River Derby games and matches the last couple of years. And, I mean, look, I mean, I can't hate the Red Bulls too much. The school that I work for, their head coach is an alum. So Chris Armas played at Adelphi. He was an All-American at Adelphi. So can't hate them too much. But listen, the Red Bulls, I mean, I'm shocked that they exited the way they did, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I know they lost Bradley Wright Phillips. I mean, I know they're down some huge key players. I mean, out of that group, who expected Red Bulls and Atlanta United to be the 2 teams out? Considering what we've seen from Major League Soccer the last few years, I mean, it would have been a no-brainer to see Atlanta United and the Red Bulls in the knockout round. But we're talking a whole new thing. I mean, I'd be shocked tomorrow if I'm seeing Minnesota United advancing again. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, to have Cincinnati come out of that group over those two is embarrassing, like beyond embarrassing. We've already seen since then Frank de Boer has a mutual parting with Atlanta, but I really think Atlanta was like, you need to go. This is horrible. So he ends up getting fired. The Red Bulls, like you said, they just let a lot of talent go, and they've been very good at home-growing talent to replace stars when they leave. We saw Thierry Henry leave, and they were able to still be a great team after that. But they let Bradley Wright Phillips go because they weren't sure about his health and the money they wanted to pay him. They let Robles go, their star goaltender who's been a rock for them forever. They let him go for nothing, and they weren't really able to replace either of those guys. They've had trouble scoring goals. Brian White and Barlow aren't great up top. They're not able to finish as well as Wright Phillips ever was. I mean, Wright Phillips is one of the best players in MLS, so it's hard to ever be on that level, but they're just not getting enough from their forward group. And quite frankly, they just didn't put it together this tournament. They're a team that's usually able to get by on being well coached and well together and structured, and we just saw none of that. Losing to Cincinnati is just not something we'd ever expect from a Red Bulls team. And one of my closest friends is a big Red Bulls fan, and he even said, he's like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. This is so different than anything I've ever seen from this team. It's never been this bad. So we'll have to see how they rebound when they get the season back going, because they're a team you don't expect to be bad, even if the talent's not there. They always find a way to be at least decent based on coaching and structure. So that was very crazy to see, but obviously happy about it. It was nice to see MLC advance by the skin of their teeth and have the Red Bulls miss on that last day, that last game. So I'm very excited that we were at least able to get this far and have something over them again, since the last derby was also won by NYC. We have that leg up, so everything's going well for us right now.
I will tell you, though, I think listen, I'm pulling for NYCFC all the way. I mean, the team that is the scariest, I mean, especially now that there's no LAFC, Columbus is gone. I mean, you're talking about the 2 probably prohibitive favorites to actually maybe win it all. Is Philly. The Union are a young team. No one knew who they were coming in. I remember watching the pregame show, before NYCFC played Philly in their first group game, and Twellman was, talking about how, we don't know what the Union have yet. They're still too young. I think they're still a year or 2 away. And look, I mean, they're coming out and they're winning games and they're winning matches in the tournament because they're young and they're hungry. So I would not be surprised to see them in the final in the end. I would not be surprised to see them win it all. I know the group match between them and Philly was great. If NYCFC and Philly meet again, but it's they're a team to watch out for. I mean, I'm not so high on Orlando, or even the team that comes out of the San Jose Minnesota game, but the Minnesota match. But I mean, if Philly has a chance to get all the way, just watch out for them because they're talented.
Yeah, I'd say Philly is the most established team. They're probably the favorites going forward. I think NYCFC has more talent, but I think Philly's been a better team now this season, this tournament. I mean, if you watched the game last night, Brandon Aronson is ridiculous. The 19-year-old American midfielder. That pass he made on that, I think it was the third goal, was ridiculous. He breaks away from two defenders and then laces this cross-field pass with a perfect curve on it, lays it right in the path of his forward running into the box. It was a thing of beauty. He's an elite player. But if you look back, the first game of the group stage was NYCFC and the Philadelphia Union. It was the first game of the tournament early in the morning. NYCFC completely outplayed them. It wasn't close. Philly scored on their only decent chance of the game, got a little lucky because it was deflected, and NYCFC just couldn't push a goal across. But we've already seen this tournament that NYC can outplay them. It's just a matter of pushing goals through. And if, like you said, that a formation change is enough to unlock some goal scoring, Philly could be in trouble if they get that version of NYCFC, because the first game they should have won anyway. So we'll see how it goes. Philly played extremely well in their game last night. Like I said, we'll have to see how City does against Portland, but it's going to be a heavyweight matchup if City does advance. It's going to be a really, really, really entertaining game. For even a casual observer, it should be a very fun match of two elite teams. So I hope we are able to see that. Obviously, as a fan, I'm rooting for City, but even as an MLS fan, you should be rooting for two Titans to go at it in the Eastern Conference Finals.
A lot of good stuff to speak about with Major League Soccer and the MLS is Back tournament. A lot of good things. We'll give you the bracket once again. As Nick said, LAFC was just upset. Who is that, Nick? That's Orlando City, you said?
Yeah.
It's Orlando City. So I'm glad that my soccer knowledge has gone from here to about here. So that's pretty cool there. And as they both said, as Ian and Nick both had said, it is an upset. Really good stuff here. And, it's 2020. Anything can happen.
So this is beyond, and I need you to understand how big of an upset this is. This is like the freaking Cleveland Browns beating the Patriots in the playoffs. Like, this is the most talented, by far, team, LAFC, who's destroying everybody, losing to a mediocre team. Honestly, actually,
without Carlos Vela. Without Carlos Vela,
we're destroying everyone. Joey, you can compare it to the Giants-Patriots Super Bowl when the Pats were 17-0 and the Giants beat them. That's basically what it is. I mean, and this Orlando City is probably a worse team than that Giants team was going in, because
by far.
they're always the bottom of the league. They never put it together. It was surprising enough that they advanced, let alone winning their first round matchup, a matchup that was kind of a toss up. But then to beat LAFC is ridiculous. Like, this is huge for Orlando to pull a win out in a game like this. Really incredible to see in this tournament. Nobody gave them a fighting chance.
Not only clearly did no one give them a fighting chance, we're finally getting into soccer on my end here. Kudos to again USL Championships, Connor McGlynn. We had him on in the interview series in the inaugural episode, but also he's one of the reasons why, as is Nick Partain too, that I am finally watching soccer. He's a professional ball player now. He was with FA Euro New York, my former employer. Really cool stuff to see him on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN Plus. He's this midfielder for the Hartford Athletic on the USL Championship level. So again, kudos to him. He did have a brotherly reunion, if you will, Philadelphia Union to Jack McGlynn. He's 16 years old and he's playing on the USL Championship level. So really cool stuff, Connor. His brother. Or Jack's brother is, I believe, about 21, 22 years old. So a little late to the party, but really, again, kudos to Connor McGlynn and good luck to Hartford Athletic the rest of the way. Again, fellas, now the moment we've all been waiting for is kudos to Joe Kelly. Why? Because I want to end this show with this. Joe Kelly did not only the right thing, I think he should go down as that I would say that photo should go down as one of the most savage photos, the best moment. Ian, give me another vocab word.
Did you see the word? I mean, without, obviously we can't say it on here, but did you read Carlos, his lips
Oh, yes.
After he threw the pitch at him, did you read his lips? Yeah. It was going to get a whole lot better.
Oh yeah. So that's basically it. I want to hear this. Nick and Ian, we have a little bit of time. Let's hear it.
So he deserves the suspension. I know no one wants to say it, but you can't throw at two guys' heads and get away with that. We knew baseball was going to drop the hammer. Problem is, if Manfred did the right thing in the first place and punished everyone that was supposed to be and took their championship ring away like he should have, maybe none of this would have happened. So once again, it's Rob Manfred's fault that we're in this situation because he had to know someone eventually was going to throw at them. We knew this was going to happen. We knew someone was going to get fed up and do it. And he has to punish him because he's trying to protect his own butt, because he's the one who's allowing teams to do this because he didn't punish them correctly himself. That's why teams are retaliating. They're doing it because Manfred didn't do the right thing himself. So now Manfred has to cover his own butt and lay a hammer down and try and keep other people from joining in. But I don't think this is going to be the only one. I don't think guys are going to care. There are going to be a lot lower profile guys than Joe Kelly that don't care about getting suspended for what is equivalent to 20 games in a regular season, because what's the difference at this point? It'll be so much more refreshing to get to throw at these guys after what they did to everyone. They deserve the worst of the worst after cheating the entire league for a championship and then not caring about it, barely giving apologies. Their general manager, I think, or the owner or somebody made really awful comments even today, I think, about how Brandon Taubman didn't do anything wrong and like he's trying to defend him after that horrible sexual harassment thing that went on there. And like the whole organization is just a pariah right now for all the terribleness that they've done. They haven't handled anything right. They deserve all the awful things coming to them. Nobody deserves a baseball thrown at their head, but you have to understand where they're coming from. Teams, everyone is pissed at them. This is going to keep happening. It's not the end of it. Good luck.
Yeah, I mean the problem is Manfred. Yep, there's the face again. I mean, Manfred basically gave the Astros carte blanche for basically throwing for throwing AJ Hinch and Carlos Beltran and the entire management under the bus. I mean, it's more or less. I mean, when you watch the movie 8 Men Out and you see the 1918 Black Sox scandal, it's like, oh, we'll tell you exactly what happened, and we just don't want anything bad to happen to us. You can't do this kind of thing without expecting retaliation. But at the same time, I mean, I think it's just funny that the guy who threw the pitch is a guy that had nothing to do with the team in 2017. The Red Sox then. I mean, it's
right. The Red Sox were the team they lost to in the ALCS, so he has a little bit of.
He has a little bit, but I mean, he didn't really prevent them from the ring either. When it comes right down to it, no, I don't think you need to be trying to take Alex Bregman's head off. You could see there's just clear intent. Was 8 games necessary? I'm kind of a little twisted. I'm kind of a little seesaw on it. I mean, in the end, you need to be told that you need to learn the fact that what you did was wrong. And Manfred is just trying to basically, as Nick says, is cover his rear end and try to make a chicken soup out of chicken. You know what? So listen, I'm not. Rob Manfred just keeps digging himself a bigger and bigger hole. And in the grand scheme of things, it's 8 games, but. I just think it's funny that it came from a guy that had nothing to do with the Astros in 2017.
Yeah,
excuse me.
Right, and not only that too. I want to chime in here, and really though, I want to agree with the two of you here and take some of your points and put it into context. Basically, I have to agree with Nick here that no one deserves a baseball, thrown at their head. Do I not agree? I definitely do not agree with the suspension, but this is the part where I agree with Nick again, is that, well, the suspension, yes. Should it be? Yes and no. The yes part is because of what's going on now. And this was the biggest thing that was said in numerous articles all over ESPN, whatever, is that I believe the reason that this lengthy suspension was handed down is because we don't want to see any escalated situations where we have benches clearing, punches thrown when there's a virus going around. That's the problem. And I think that if you hand down an 8-game suspension, that would be the example that you have to make and basically say, okay, yes, we know, well, clearly, Manfred is a clown, whatever, we get that. But if Manfred did what he was supposed to do in the first place, as Nick said, none of this would be happening. Joe Kelly's trying to make a point. He's trying to do whatever. And if I'm not mistaken, again, you don't want punches thrown. You also had Dave Roberts and also Dusty Baker. I think they were close to one another as well when they both came out of their respective dugouts. both at high risk, or I know Dusty is anyway, and he's still picking he still has the toothpick. So kudos.
Joe, you want to set a precedent like of all times? You want to set a precedent in the wake of COVID-19?
Well,
where's this precedent beforehand? I mean, guys. Where was the precedent when Noah Syndergaard threw at Chase Utley in 2016? Where was the precedent with anything else?
I agree.
Now?
Yeah. But the whole thing, though, no. But the whole thing now is that the damage is done, and now you're trying to basically you're trying to light out, or you're trying to put the fire out with more gasoline a little bit, if you will. And it's really bad because, now, again, as Nick said, is that Rob Manfred did not do the right thing in the first place. So now you are having an ignorant team, an arrogant team, not apologetic team, basically saying, haha, look at this, we got the ring, and it was not taken off from us. So now, because Rob Manfred was very, very lenient on this team that did not deserve anything, you now have to do this because you basically put yourself into this mess. And now, so Major League Baseball does not get into even a bigger mess where they potentially might have to cancel the season, a la what we've heard from Keith Olbermann in the last few hours about potential alternate programming following Sunday contests. You have to do something. And you have to basically cover your rear end, exactly what you said. And Ian, I have to agree with you there with Noah Syndergaard and whatnot. But guess what? The Astros didn't cheat in 2015 yet. There was no cheating yet. There was no whatever. So yeah, they could have done that. But this whole thing, where this whole scandal, this whatever, this didn't happen before, and there was no ramifications that could have been. Does that make sense? Anybody want to come to me, tell me I'm an idiot? Please speak up.
You want to take that, Nick? I mean, I'm not sure right now how to respond to it.
I mean, Joe, you're right on a lot of stuff, obviously, because you agree with me. I'm going to agree right back. But, I mean, that suspension, the funniest thing I saw on Twitter was people saying if Joe Kelly didn't want to get suspended, he should have cheated. Like that, how does that happen? Suspend the guy who didn't cheat and then leave the cheaters and let them be. Like, that's so funny to me that Manfred has just been so wrong about everything. Like, how does one person screw up so many things in a row? It's incredible how bad he is as a commissioner.
Well, that's the problem. That's what I'm saying. So now he's trying to cover his butt.
Right. That is what he's doing. He's doing a bad job of it, just like everything else. But that's the motive, is that he has to draw up a big suspension to make himself look better, to try and cover his own butt. Because if he doesn't make it a ridiculously egregious suspension, more guys are going to jump on him and be like, oh, 2 games? Yeah, I'll throw at him for that. That's worth it. Right. But if I guess he'll hope that a couple more guys go, oh, that's too rich for my blood, I'm not going to do it. But who knows? I still think people are going to still throw at them a few more times this year. Especially out of it. Oh, yeah. They're going to have a field day throwing at these guys.
Well, I think to a certain degree in a 60-game season, I don't think you're going to see teams that are in contending spot trying to have their pitchers suspended. I mean, right now, Joe Kelly did it 5 games into the year. So, yeah, if you lose a reliever at this point, is it the worst thing in the world? No. But, like, when you're coming down to the home stretch of the season, and you're even getting – once we get into August, which is tomorrow, I mean, you get into mid-late August, I mean, you're not going to see teams like, I'm just, thinking of like divisional teams. You're not going to see teams like the Dodgers or maybe even the Rockies, in interleague games, like throwing at them. You might see a team like the Mariners at the end of the season take a shot, because why not? I mean, Mariners, no one's expecting Seattle to do much. No one's expecting I expected a little more from the Angels to start the year, but no one's expecting much out of them right now. So, like, maybe at the end of the season, they'll bring Mike Trout out of the bullpen and he'll boom, Bregman. But, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, it's not like there's never been precedents for suspensions before. I'm not trying to put it on the same stage as saying taking PEDs or it's a way of cheating we've never seen before. Okay. Like, it's not like the Astros took money to throw games. It's not like the Astros, are shooting themselves up with HGH or something like that. This is something that we've never seen before. I mean, this is like New England Patriots Spygate stuff. I mean, who really thought, whistles and banging garbage cans was going to really give you an upper edge in baseball of all sports? But guess what? It happened. And I mean, I just don't know why now because this is something we've never seen before that we're waiting to set precedents.
When he dropped the penalty in the first place. Like, I don't understand how you let them keep their championship ring. I don't. You've literally made it clear to every other team in baseball, I guess, not in every other sport, but you've made it clear to every other baseball team that you can cheat, win a championship, and keep it. Like, how do you let that be the precedent? How many teams in baseball would pay $5 million and a couple of draft picks for a title? Everyone, literally everyone would say, I'll take a title. I'll pay you $5 million. I'll fire my GM. I'll fire my manager, and I'll give you some draft picks. You give me that ring. That's completely worth it. Everyone on the planet would make the same deal in every sport. So your punishment wasn't enough if that's the case. You should have taken the championship away. You hit him with the max fine. That was good. You made him fire the GM and manager basically because you suspended them. That's fine. But you should have taken the ring away, and the kingpin players should have gotten suspensions, whether they gave you information or not. You shouldn't have needed their testimony to get enough information out. Enough other guys from other teams knew what was going on. You didn't need Schraier and Altuve and Bregman's testimony to seal the deal on this punishment. You knew something was going wrong outside of that. You could have gotten the information without giving them immunity. It was horribly handled by a horrible commissioner in a league that's shooting itself in the foot every year, even without Manfred. Declining in attendance possibilities, declining in interest. The younger generation cares, I feel like, less about baseball than anything else. It's everything's going downhill for this sport. And Manfred had a chance to really give him a shot in the arm and show that we're tough and that we can do the right thing, and the flat out didn't. They wasted it.
Right, and that's another thing too is that again you have to make an example out of something again. And I hate to keep bringing up COVID, but it's not only that. It's also because you don't want everyone to start throwing at the Astros, and then it becomes a bigger thing, and then it becomes a bigger thing. And then eventually, I would not be surprised, again, where if this does happen again and it's intentional and someone does take the bull by the horn, it's not going to be an 8-game suspension. It's going to be a lot more, in my opinion. I think it's going to be, I would say, you know what, multiply that by 2 and let's say 16. So that would be, I don't know, a quarter of the season if my math is right. Where's our mathematician for the Eastern Observer? 16 divided by 60 or whatever it is.
Or yeah, 15 would be an exact quarter. So
right, exactly, yeah. You see, that's mental math. I should know that. I can't write, can't read, can't do math, whatever. But again, that's the part where I'm at, Ian. And that's the part where I can't say that, going back to 15, whatever. We have to look at now, and Rob Manfred has been doing a horrible job. He's trying to cover his butt, and that's really where we're at.
We could keep saying it over and over again. It's Manfred trying to protect himself. I mean, listen, I don't know if he's going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, I know the NFL owners have their own issues with Roger Goodell. I mean, listen, let's just say this. It's really scary to think about the fact that the best commissioner right now in sports, based on what he's doing for his league, is Gary Bettman. I mean, it's scary to think that, for a league that's had 2 lockouts.
Yeah.
When it comes right down to it, it's, the suspension is the suspension. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it. We know why we feel this way about the suspension. And in the grand scheme of things, to Nick's point, it's not. It's just the tip of the iceberg. So.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So let's continue here. We're almost done here. Kudos also, our final kudos to Patrick Mahomes, ladies and gentlemen. He's now officially a part owner of the Kansas City Royals organization. Really, really cool stuff. And you know what? He's earned it. He's done a fantastic job. And now eventually, to be completely honest with you guys, and this is going to be quick, I don't ever see him becoming a coach. I see him becoming one of like an owner. I see him one of those, those Derek Jeter type players, or like a Kobe Bryant where, may he rest in peace, obviously, but where he would be up, in that Mount Rushmore of owning a team or running an academy, or, showing his daughter the way, a la Kobe Bryant, just doing really cool things, not being on the sidelines or not being in a TV booth. What do you guys think?
I don't know what the number is. I mean, that he gave. I mean, the stake has to be minuscule. I mean, in terms of like the grand scheme of the number. I mean, now that he's making hundreds of millions of dollars, he could tell the Kansas City Royals, "What do you want me to write you a check for?" I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, he's right now the best quarterback in football. He's getting paid like the best quarterback in football, and he's investing his money. And in grand scheme of things, I mean, how much money is he really putting towards the team, and what stake? What is he getting? Like what Jay-Z had with Brooklyn with the Nets? I mean, was it 2 or 3%? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's great. I mean, it shows, it keeps it within the Kansas City community. I mean, it's great, especially considering Arrowhead and Kauffman Stadium are literally located in the same parking lot. I mean, it's it's cool. It's great. I mean, it's great to see a guy like Mahomes, who comes from a great background, to really invest his money and put it in the local baseball team. And the Royals, much to the chagrin of me, who won a World Series 5 years ago, it's just good to see. I mean, like I said, the stake's going to be small. The stake in the team is tiny, but at least it's good to see him putting that money to good use.
Yeah, and on top of it too, Nick, he's 23 years old. That's the coolest part, and that he's younger than all three of us, and just to be able to put whatever it is, not many 23-year-olds nowadays not only have that money to do that, but also have the guidance to do that. A lot of these players would be buying homes or buying cars, fancy cars, whatever. But no, he's putting some of the money into the Kansas City Royals and investing in that. And I personally believe that's really admirable for a younger kid to do that. Nick, your thoughts?
I think we got to be careful. He already basically owns the Chiefs. He's trying to take over the Royals. Take the world over without us knowing.
Own the whole sports facility,
how cute is it when he's flying in here? But look out, he's going to own everything before this is all said and done. His next contract's going to be $500 billion, and he's just going to start taking over all the teams, and he's going to run the whole damn sport at some point. We got to be careful. He needs to be stopped early. Someone's got to get this kid out. Can't have this. No.
You might be working for his accounting firm at some point.
That's too good. All right, guys. Listen, I know that it's been one hell of a show. We've been on the air over 2 hours this time. So, I know we did not get to speak about everything, and I know Ian's probably kicking me and saying, "Why aren't we talking about the Knicks?" But we are out of time. It's better.
I mean, listen, the Tibbs move is great. Let's leave it at that.
There you go. All right, so Nick, so quick thing. What do you think about Tibbs?
I hope it's great. He's got a winning pedigree, but I don't know if he's the right coach for a rebuilding team. The Timberwolves thing kind of scares me a little bit.
All right, well, that's where we're going to leave it off, ladies and gentlemen. So we do want to say little cross-promotion here. Essential Wrestling Podcast, Tyler Adele, Al Carl will be back with you. John DeConti, John Smith, Tuesday, August 4th starting at 6 p.m., it's going to be tons of fun. Essential Wrestling Podcast, episode number 13. Continuing to move on as well, cross-promoting myself, I guess, the New York Professional Scouts Association, the Scouts Minute, episode number 17. We will be featuring New York Mets area scout Larry Izzo starting tomorrow at 11 a.m. Tune in on the Eastern Observer website, also on the Instagram of the New York Professional Scouts Association, as well as Sunday when we do the Scouts Report, which is a more in-depth version. And Larry Izzo is the one that drafted and also signed Steven Matz, Anthony Kay, Jay Bergman, and a few other Major League prospects. That comes your way on Sunday right here on the Eastern Observer and the New York Professional Scouts channel. We were actually out in East Setauket just a few days ago shooting that clip. Also, one last thing before we do go, folks, we did have our good friend Dennis Bernstein on earlier. Tune in tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. Pacific, when the hot stove powered by the fourth period comes your way on Channel 91, Sirius XM, the NHL Network Radio, with DB, Ryan Payton, and David Pagnotta. Ian, one last time, cannot thank you enough for coming on, my friend.
Happy to be on here.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, for Nick Partain, Ian Schraier, the Eastern Observer, and all of us here at the Blackjack Media Group, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We'll see you next time.